Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem. Hi, this is Stephen Thompson.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio. Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
We are back, guys. Welcome to another episode of Submission Radio. It's the 7th of August. Dennis Schrader here with Kasper Ozolowski on the return episode of Submission Radio. Cass, we've been gone for so long. It's great to be back.
Oh, man, it feels so good to be back. And it's been far too long. We do apologize for those still here, still sticking with us. We do apologize for the long break. Obviously, we were overseas. We were covering UFC 200, International Fight Week. You even stayed afterwards and traveled the US. But here we are, back doing the show. We got some sexy guests, don't we, Dennis?
Yeah, there's a lot that's been going on in the world of MMA that we haven't really been able to talk about. But later in the show, we'll talk about some of those things. But we have some fun guests on the show to sort of fill in a few gaps. We've got a couple of coaches that I guess you could say are pretty important right about now. And a fighter who is really entrenched in what's going on in this UFC welterweight division because he was the first ever UFC welterweight champion. He'll give us his thoughts. And then finally, Cass, we've got a homegrown talent that's coming off a very, very big UFC win, and he's on the show as well. So I didn't really reveal the curtain on who those guys are. Do you want to let the people know?
Yeah, we got 4 people. That's all you get to know, so just stick around, you'll find out. Now, so obviously we've got Coach Mike Winkeljohn. He's going to be on first. Obviously, so much to talk to him about Holly Holm, John Jones, this Chael Sonnen accusation, Cowboy Cerrone. So Coach Wink is going to be on the show. Then we've got Damien Brown, who just won at UFC 201. Fascinating story there. I mean, he used to be in the Army. He's now a prison officer. So there's a lot of things we want to ask him about that. Then we've also got Pat Miletic. I mean, crazy things happening in the welterweight division these days. So we've got Pat Miletic to discuss all things welterweight in the UFC. And we also wanted a bit of an update on Pat, so we want to see what he's been up to. And then to finish off the show, Richard Perez. He's going to be the man behind Nate Diaz when he takes on Conor McGregor UFC 202. So we want to get the update, what Nate Diaz has been up to, how's he looking in training. And there's a lot to discuss in general with Richard. And then afterwards, we're going to be talking about UFC Salt Lake City. I mean, it was a long card if you sat through it. Some fun fights. We're going to be taking just a few of the fights, talking about them, giving our analysis and what we think. And then afterwards, Dennis and myself will be breaking down the UFC's welterweight division, what to do next with Tyron Woodley, is it GSP, is it Nate Diaz, is it Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Condit Maya. It's such a mess, and we can't wait to discuss it. Right, Dennis?
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun finally breaking down our thoughts on this because I've been meaning to get my thoughts out on this for a while, Cass, but unfortunately we didn't really have a way to do it. So excited for the end of the show when we can do that. And look, before we let you guys know about the new Submission Radio merchandise, that's right, there's going to be some merchandise available for you guys. I just want to quickly remind you that if you haven't liked us on Facebook yet, it's facebook.com/Submission Radio AUS. Jump on there, give us a like, shoot us a message if you want. We love chatting to our listeners. And also on Twitter, if you haven't followed us yet, there's a lot of fun stuff to follow, lots of fun gifts and opportunities for you guys to get in touch with us in a different kind of way, and that's at Submission Radio, at Submission AUS.
Yeah, so check us out on Twitter, give us a follow, and now you mentioned the merchandise a little bit early. It is finally officially out there. You guys have been hounding us for a very, very long time, and rightfully so, saying, where are the Submission Radio t-shirts out there? Well, now you can buy more than t-shirts. There's t-shirts, there's hoodies, there's pullovers, there's sweatshirts, there's tank tops if you want to wear them at the gym. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. We've kept them nice and cheap for you. So if you want to represent, you can. We figured out, the logistics, and they ship worldwide. So if you go to submissionradio.com and at the top right, click store, it'll take you straight there. And if you are listening to us or watching on YouTube, just go in the description below and you can click it. There is a link. We'll probably put it in the comments as well. So if you are so inclined, grab some Submission Radio merchandise and some apparel. Now, without further ado, enough chat from us, enough small talk. It's time for our first guest, and Dennis, I believe, is on the line.
All right, guys, joining us back here on Submission Radio is a friend of the show who is one half of one of the best gyms in the MMA game today. Joining us all the way from Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's a pleasure to welcome Coach Mike Winkeljohn back to Submission Radio. Coach, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me back, guys.
It is always a great pleasure having you on the show. Now, Coach, it's been a while since we've spoken, so we got to ask, how's the family going, and have you been surviving the crazy summer heat in Albuquerque? Because we were in Vegas recently, and it was ridiculously hot. We can only imagine how hot it is in Albuquerque.
Yeah, Albuquerque's not quite as hot as Las Vegas, but the family and I are surviving. We're doing good. Thanks for asking.
Do you have some kind of sneaky tips to survive summer in Albuquerque? Like you open the fridge door for 10 minutes every hour, or you have some kind of weird rubber band that holds a fan together? What's a sneaky trick or tip from Coach Wink?
Nothing weirder than just drink a lot of dang water, man. It's dry. It's really dry out here. It's definitely a desert. There's no doubt about it. So you got to stay hydrated.
Now, there's been a lot going on, obviously, at your gym, and we want to get to that. But first, we obviously got to find out how have the Aussies been progressing. Have there been any promising Aussies coming down to the gym to train lately?
Yeah, you know what? There's been some good Aussies, and you're going to catch me off guard because I'm not going to know the names at the moment. But I got a new young man that's 19. He said he never wrestled before a day in his life. I wish I had his name. I wish I could walk downstairs right now and get it for you. Great stand-up fighter, and he was holding his own just with his tenacity and his wrestling in our wrestling classes. So, you know what? I don't know what you guys are feeding those guys down there, but they sure are tough.
Yeah, well, they built us tough, Wink. We're not going to lie about it. There's some tough dudes here, so we like to think that we're a part of the combination. But, okay, a lot going on in the gym. A lot of fans are excited to see one man in particular, Carlos Condit, coming back to the octagon against Damien Maia. But before we ask you about Condit's preparation, we have to know, did you watch the Robbie Lawler fight with Tyron Woodley, and what was your reaction when Tyron became the new champion?
Well, you know, it was one of those things. I was trying to get Carlos to do the exact same thing to Robbie, and Tyron throws quick overhands. I mean, he hit Carlos with a few of them, so I know he was very capable of it, so I wasn't surprised. I was surprised at how fast it came. I was surprised that it didn't take much longer to find the one shot. But then again, like I said, Tyron's just a tremendous athlete. I like both the guys. Tyron's always been just respectful, just so good for him. Here we go, new champ.
A lot of people still don't really know what to think about Tyron's fight with Carlos and even though it was a while ago, because while he did beat him, some people still feel that it was an unfortunate injury that beat Condit and not Tyron. Where do you sit on that fight? How do you think a rematch goes?
The same thing. It was an injury. There's no doubt about it, but the injury's caused by Tyron doing what he does. You know, a little bit of a scramble there, got that knee hurt, and then when we got kicked, it ruined his day. It exposed how much it got hurt earlier. But that was hurt by Tyron just because of the fight, so you can't take that away from the guy. He beat Carlos, but Carlos would love a rematch. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah, because we never really did get to see what the game plan from Carlos was for Tyron because the fight ended so early. If this rematch does happen, how do you see this one playing out? How would you see Carlos beating Tyron?
Well, you know what? I think we definitely beat him at kicking range, but Tyron can definitely close the gap very quickly with his athleticism. So we got to put some kind of wall up to keep that from happening, some kind of unpredictableness to what we're doing, and or some kind of wall that's immovable that we're shielding those overhands real well and able to still defend this takedown, because Tyron's, you know, he's double trouble there. He can penetrate on his doubles as well as throw big bombs.
Well, Woodley wants Nate Diaz next, or potentially George St-Pierre. If Carlos beats Damien Maia, do you think him versus Stephen Thompson would make sense as the next fight? And if so, how would you see that one playing out? Because that's one that could really, you know, elevate Carlos to that next title opportunity. Oh yeah, you know what? Stephen Thompson is just an incredible fighter, and he's brought that footwork, that stand-up striking that you kind of see in the karate world, kind of like Machida did, back into MMA again. So it's kind of exciting to watch the speed he has and the ability to throw kicks the way he has. But with Carlos, you got a tough nut, because Carlos, first off, we've seen him go to war. We've seen him take shots. Not that I want him to have to take a shot again, but he's unpredictable himself. He can throw punches and kicks from so many angles, and he's got tremendous footwork that no longer is Stephen Thompson going to be the guy that can move in and out when he wants. Now he's got to deal with Carlos saying, no, it's my turn. And so it really is going to come down to who can impose whose will on the other and become the leader in that fight.
Well, Maia himself resembles a bit of an anaconda in that octagon, just taking opponents down and systematically destroying them. How do you and Carlos negate that situation, and what do you think his biggest advantages over Maia will be in this upcoming fight?
Oh, there's no doubt. It's striking. We can't lie about it. I think he can easily beat him striking. We could easily lose if we get caught off guard. But Carlos has got a great submission game, a great submission defense game. You know, people understand he's had a lot of finishes, you know, on the ground with his own submissions. He understands how the game works really well. and he's working it nonstop. We expect to have Damien on his back, and we're going to have to defend it. It's going to happen somewhere in the fight. But along the way, Damien's got to try his hardest not to get punched, kicked, or kneed in the face.
With Carlos, obviously, you guys are envisioning him winning. At what point do you think that happens? Because Carlos has had some early finishes, but I think a lot of people are sort of saying to the later rounds is when Carlos might really sort of step up and dominate and take over. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Well, Carlos is known as a 5-round fighter. His conditioning is great, and the longer the fight goes, the harder it's going to be for Damien to shoot those long shots, to reach him, to try to cut the cage off, or whatever the case, if that would be our game plan. But I expect Carlos to catch him early. I think Damien's going to try his hardest to get him to the ground, and we're looking for some openings when he's trying to do that and expose him with the openings that he leaves Carlos.
Well, jumping over to another big thing that happened was obviously Holly Holm's loss to Shevchenko. Just want to get your thoughts on the matchup itself, Coach, because a lot of people were talking about the fact that they didn't really feel like that fight should have been put together because it sort of hurt a few big money fights between maybe Holm and a rematch with Tate, or Holm and Ronda Rousey. Now that some time has passed and the team sort of looked back on it, has anybody sort of regretted the move of taking Shevchenko instead of waiting for a bigger opponent?
No, you know what? First off, I don't know if Ronda's coming back. They said wait for Ronda forever. That just hasn't happened. Nor is it going to happen at Holly's age. That's just ridiculous. Holly just wants to fight. So she wanted to fight whoever they put in front of her. That's just how Holly is. Do we regret taking Shevchenko? No, because that wasn't Holly Holm. For many reasons, that just wasn't Holly, and that could have happened to no matter who she fought that night. All fighters have those nights for whatever reason where they just don't perform, and Holly had that night.
Is there anything specific that you sort of look at and point to for what went wrong in this one after you sort of looked over the video and sort of analyzed it?
It just wasn't there. It wasn't anything. Shevchenko was just all about counterpunch. Holly knew. We knew that's what she wanted to do. We thought we had the answer for it, but I couldn't get Holly to do those things. So I failed in that. I couldn't get her to believe in the game plan. I failed in that. I couldn't get her to move more like she always does. I have people telling me, gosh, maybe you should have told Holly to move. It's kind of funny. It's wow, that's all she's ever done her whole life. I'm glad you told me that. But it's just one of those nights that fighters have. It sucks, and almost every fighter's had those nights where if you ask them their name, they wouldn't be able to answer it at the moment because they're stuck in that freeze, that cognitive freeze.
It was a bit of an off night, but unfortunately Holly's second loss in a row, and she went from an undefeated fighter to losing her title and then losing in another fight. It has to be a difficult situation to deal with for a competitor like her. A bit of time has gone by from the fight, and obviously you guys are very close. How have you found that she's coping with the second loss?
Oh, she's pissed. She hates it. It sucks. There's no doubt about it. She had surgery on her hand the other day. She did bust her thumb really bad in the fight. And that's no excuse. That didn't stop her from throwing it. That's not what happened. But she's just gonna overcome that and get back in the gym and go back. I'm gonna tell you, she's lost the title. Lost the title before when she got knocked out, and she'll be back. That's just Holly. She's driven.
I was going to say, that must be really frustrating for her because she's had injuries in the past. I remember speaking to you years back before she made a UFC debut, and that was one of the things keeping her on the shelf, that broken arm. And now she's obviously got the second loss. She's got the thumb surgery. But do you find that that's also something that drives her to make her want to, get back in the cage as soon as possible and obviously get over this injury and get that win back?
Oh yeah, last time when she had a broken arm, we couldn't punch, do anything with the arm, so we did everything else. We went back to our footwork, we went back to just throwing more kicks, and she got better at all these other aspects. So, here we are again. We'll be doing the same thing. Get back to Holly Holm doing what she did all along that got her to that place. So, last time I heard it, in some ways it was a blessing in disguise. I'm not saying that this time by any means because losing sucks, but we got to learn from it and make the best of it.
Well, the women's bantamweight division is just nuts at the moment. You have a new champion in Amanda Nunes, obviously Holm and Tate are both coming off losses, and there's a question mark on if Ronda Rousey will ever come back to the sport. What do you think about the state of the division? And if you could choose, who do you think should get the next title shot against Amanda Nunes? Because this one's a real head scratcher, Coach.
You know what? I like Pena. I really do. I think Jessica Pena is a tough fighter, tough young lady, and I think she can scrap. I think that somebody that's willing to come at Amanda that way. I think, again, I thought that I was wrong with Miesha Tate. I figured Miesha Tate would wear down Amanda. But Amanda, throw some hard punches and caught Miesha early on. I think that Amanda's better than I thought she was, apparently. But I think that could be a great fight.
Is there a fight that you think makes sense for Holly next? And obviously, how soon do you think she'll get back into the octagon after this injury and after she rehabs and heals and things like that?
It'll be toward the end of the year. It'll take that long. So we haven't even thought about it at this point, of what's next, and we'll see what unfolds. I like to see Holly get back on, get a couple wins, and get a shot back at getting toward the biggest women's division again.
Is this fight with Chris Cyborg out of the question, Coach? A lot of people sort of want to see it, but it could be at 140, even 145. It's not the bantamweight division. Would you like to see that fight happen sometime this year, or do you think it just doesn't make sense for Holly at this time?
It does not make sense for Holly this time. You know what? First off, they want a Cyborg to fight in Brazil against Holly Holm, and it doesn't make sense right now to fight a bigger girl out of your own weight division in her hometown when you're not known for knocking people out. So that's not logical for starters. But it just does not make sense at the moment. Holly would take the damn fight if I let her, because she'll fight anybody. But right now we just got to get through fixing her thumb and, let Cyborg come down to 135 and fight all these girls. Was it anything more than the whole Brazil situation and the timing? If it was in America and the timing was right, do you think you and Holly would go for that fight at some point? Oh, at some point, yeah. Well, there's no doubt about it, because Holly's a fighter. That's what she does. Cyborg's got a lot of holes. She just hits really hard, and she's just bigger than the girls she fights. So it's one of those things that come down a weight, and Holly's got no problem fighting her.
Speaking of big fights, obviously we were there in Vegas for 200 when everybody found out about Jon Jones and his fight with Daniel Cormier being cancelled. Now, we know, Mike, you're not at liberty to talk about the situation, but we want to try and sort of get your reaction and thoughts on what I guess happened. He's a guy who, has come off multiple controversies in his career, coming back and had looked to seemingly turn his whole life around. And unfortunately, this situation occurred, after a full training camp of preparation, a few days no less, before the event. How did you react to the situation? What were your thoughts on it? Oh, well, I was pissed off about the situation in that, he's got to be careful. We've got to be careful. Everybody's got to be careful on everything you put in your body, no matter who gives it to you. You can't just take whatever, because you never know what's in there, what it's tainted with, what's going to come up on a drug test. I don't think he would have done anything out of the ordinary to try to do a performance enhancer type situation, but what's going on is, apparently something's tainted, and hopefully that's what's going to come out here soon. And then hopefully all that bad talk about Jon Jones will start going away, and we'll get him back into fighting. Yeah, a lot of people sort of pointing the finger, trying to figure out whose fault it is for not checking what's in the substance. We've spoken about the team that Jon has around him a number of times over the years and a number of times through the controversies. Whose job do you think it is to check what's in the substance that he takes? Is it Jon Jones? Is he the one who has to contact whoever is responsible to find out what's in it? Or is there someone in his management team who should be keeping an eye on what's going into his body? What's your theory on sort of who should be keeping an eye on this kind of thing? I think it's both. I think it's both. There's no doubt about it. And he's learned. I think he's learned he's got to pay attention to these things. His management has learned that they got to help him pay attention to those things. So, everybody's getting on board and pay attention a little bit more, because these tests are popping up, and it seems to be happening quite often that people are taking something that was made by a company that has some illegal stuff, and maybe they're using the same machines to pack it. I'm not sure how it happens, but and trace amounts are coming up. So with that being said, people just have to be really careful and just go back to eating normal diets and don't take anything else but vegetables and meats and good food. You're right. It has happened recently, and there have been fighters who got much shorter suspensions as opposed to the 2 years expected. And you mentioned finger pointing before, but Jon Jones, he is entitled to his, I guess, adjudication process. Nothing is finalized, and he'll still have his story heard. Do you think people may have sort of, I guess, judged Jon a little bit prematurely at this point?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt premature. I think that's for some reason that's society now. They look for the worst right away and they jump on it. You look at the news, everything out there. It's everybody's looking to how they can tear down somebody. You know, it makes them feel better about themselves because they haven't been successful doing something. It's a shame that it's that way. You know, across the board, even in politics.
Well, let's say he does get that 2-year suspension and he's out till he's 31 years old, which is something that could change depending on how it all goes. Do you believe he'll still be able to? Do you think he'll still be in his prime and as dangerous as he has been, or is there a chance that fans get that taken away from them because of him being away during the prime years of his career?
Oh no, you know what? Assuming he doesn't get distracted on time off, and when we're talking about just it's hypothetical. I don't know how much time off, so I'm not even sure I should even worry about that at the moment. I've always said no one beats Jon Jones but himself. That's it, and he's got many years to keep going and figure this out if he's got the opportunity to. If it turns out that he's able to.
I'm wondering, you know, being a guy that's coached Jon for so many years, I'm sure you guys have a close relationship and he looks up to you. Was there any advice that you gave him after this situation happened? You know, anything to get him through this time?
You know, just honestly, I told him, hey, what's important right now is your family. You know, you have your kids out there, Jon. All this other stuff is just real important to everybody else. Your career is real important to everybody else, and I know it's important to you. But at the end of the day, go take care of your family, man. Just let them know that you're there, and you're going to fix all this stuff and come out ahead, and you know, be the good role model, you know, in the future for his kids.
Last question about Jon, and then we move on. Chael Sonnen last month made some headlines when he told a story and made a huge claim that at some point in time, USADA came to your gym and Jon hid under the cage to avoid being drug tested. This is, of course, a heavy accusation. I feel like since he said this, nobody's given you or Greg a chance to defend yourselves or clear anything up. So how do you respond to something like that?
Just Chael Sonnen trying to make himself relevant. You know, this whatever, you know. No, Jon is not hiding from that stuff, and nor we want him to do so.
So it never happened. It's completely false. Is that correct?
That's completely false.
Sure. Now, finally, Mike, before we can't let you go without asking about one of the biggest characters in MMA currently, Donald Cerrone. He's in a pretty sweet position again with Eddie Alvarez being champion. If he beats Rick Story at UFC 202 and obviously having a previous win over Eddie, do you expect him to get another title shot, maybe even in the next couple of fights?
Oh, heck yeah. I expect Donald to win this fight with Story. Story's just a tremendous fighter that's going to, you know, come forward and do what he does and try to hit Donald in the body and take Donald down and try to survive these knees and kicks that Donald has. But people don't understand how good of hips Donald Cerrone has. He's very hard to take down. And he's an animal. He's just destroying people in the gym right now. He's on a high like he never has before. I see him winning this fight with the Story. We've got to get that out of the way first. But, yeah, I think the title shot's there. I think and Donald kind of wants that now. I think before he just wanted to fight, but I think deep down he wants to get that title.
Yeah, have you seen
for anything else? He makes more money that way.
Well, have you seen anything in Eddie that leads you to believe that the rematch would go any different, or do you think that if Cowboy fights Eddie again, we'll have a new lightweight champion?
We'll have a new lightweight champion, but you know, let's not talk about that. I'm a big believer in what Cowboy Cerrone can do. Like I said, mentally, he's like one of the toughest guys in the world. But we got to get this fight first with Rick Story. That's what's important right now. And if we were to think about that and lose focus on Rick Story, we could fail.
All right, well, there you guys go. Make sure to visit Jackson Winkeljohn, where you can fly down from Australia and train with the best of the best. So check it out at jacksonwink.com and check out those bunks, and let's get some more Aussies down at the gym. Mike, as always, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you chatting with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, everybody, this is Tyron, the Chosen One Woodley. You are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest is coming off an incredibly impressive victory at the memorable UFC 201, where he knocked out Cesar Arzumendia in under 3 minutes and claimed his first UFC victory. He is none other than Aussie Damien Beatdown Brown. Damien, welcome to Submission Radio. How's it going today?
Great, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Now, congratulations on the big victory at UFC 201. Before we even discuss the win, we heard that you committed carbicide afterwards and had a bit of a food party. Tell us about it. How much bread did you really consume?
Oh, man. Bread. I'm a baker by trade. Bread makes me sick. I eat it that much, but it's definitely something that I miss throughout my camp. You know, I eat rice and everything throughout my camp, but I don't eat bread. And as soon as I start eating burgers and stuff, man, it just messes with me. So I ate a lot of bread. Like the other night I had three brioche buns, and then I had 2 entrees which both had sourdough with them, and that was before I even got my pork belly.
Oh, wow. So you're a brioche man. You go in the upper class kind of bread scale. I'm just wondering, is that the norm for you, Damien? Or sometimes do you sort of go the VB of breads where you just get the white processed stuff?
No, it's not the norm. It's just I'm more of like a sourdough Turkish bread kind of person. But I was down at the Darling for some Fox Sports stuff and interviews and that, and I went to the Star with my wife, took her out for dinner. I went to the Black, and it's like it's a pretty flush restaurant in Sydney. It was nice to treat her to that, but unfortunately they dish up some pretty awesome brioche buns. So.
Oh, wow.
If you had to choose one, if the world was coming to an end and there was only one type of bread that survived the apocalypse, Damien, what type of bread are we going with here?
Definitely a traditional sourdough.
Talk to me about this.
On the inside.
Talk to me a little bit about this. Why this choice? It's a very controversial decision here.
I like my bread to be crunchy on the outside because it gives it that bit of a chew. So, like nice and soft on the inside, heaps of air pockets, not massive ones, but just like real good air pockets. But then, like on the outside, it's gonna be nice and crunchy. So once you've eaten the inside, you can kind of chew on the outside of it. That's why I go for sourdough.
I feel like Fox Sports have their analysts, and I feel like you do really well on the Food Channel for like a bread as a bread analyst position.
Well,
you could be doing play-by-play.
I am a baker and pastry chef by trade, so I'm guessing I'd probably go alright at it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, what was more satisfying for you, Damien, getting your first win in the UFC or the devastating way in which you got it done? Or was it talking to Joe Rogan afterwards?
Yeah, that was a pretty special moment as well, hey? I think just about every fight I look forward to talking to Joe Rogan. You know, like, and it's nothing against the other, commentators and whatnot, because they're all sort of moving up in the game, but like, if you look at the UFC and its history, you know, Joe Rogan has been the key guy for so long that, you're like, I want my first victory, I want it in devastating style, and then I want to talk to Joe Rogan. You know, it just tops it all off, you know what I mean? But definitely the most satisfying part of the experience for me was the way I finished the fight. I know a lot of mates back home had me for the knockout, you know, and I was like, you guys are the worst gamblers in the world. Like, I've got 2 knockouts in a 24-fight record. Like,
what do you mean? So they were betting against you? They thought you were going to get knocked out?
No, they had money on me to win by knockout. But out of 15 victories, I've only ever won twice by knockout. So for them to think that, like, I was going to win by knockout, I'm like, you dudes obviously aren't smart gamblers. You're just gambling because you're backing me. Yeah. But I thought I was going to win by knockout, but I didn't. You know, I kind of thought it was going to be more of a drop him and ground and pound him away for a minute and a half until he quit kind of knockout. But to land that double right hand, which I drilled so often with my striking coach over the last 3 months, it's definitely the most satisfying part of it, because it's something that I drilled and drilled and drilled and drilled so much.
Well, talk to us about the emotion that went through your head when you realized that you've actually done it and got that win by such a devastating fashion. Did you feel relieved that the 8 weeks of training had paid off and you were finally able to put Brisbane behind you and live up to your name and get that UFC win?
Yeah, I think the emotions were a little uncontrollable. Like I didn't really expect it to feel like that. It's kind of a weird feeling. I never felt like I had to put Brisbane behind me. I kind of thought Brisbane, all but getting a W on my record, was sort of a win for me anyway. 6 days notice, nearly 13 kilos, gone the distance with a multiple-time world champion black belt who couldn't finish me. Probably, if anything, I was closer to finishing him on the ground than he was me. I sort of took that as a win anyway. I was on a 5-fight win streak with camps. You know what I mean? No camp, coming off a holiday. That's a win. So I didn't really feel like I had to put it behind me. But it was definitely a nice way for me. I've spoken to Joe Silver in the past, and I said to him, you give me one shot, and I can promise one thing, and that is that win, lose, or draw, the fans will know who I am. And that's my style of fighting, So it doesn't matter whether I win or whether I lose. My opponent knows they've been in a fight, and so do I, and the fans walk away talking about it. So, I think if anything, it was nice to just, get the victory the way I did, and it's sort of like staying true to your word kind of thing. I told him I'd put on a show, and that's what I went there to do.
Oh, I mean, it was a fantastic knockout. Do you feel like you accomplished that goal? Well, obviously the fans are talking about it, and I'm wondering if you sort of spoke to Joe Silver afterwards, maybe exchange a few words, maybe told him, see, I told you this is going to happen.
No, not really after the show, but when he shakes your hand in the cage.
Yeah.
I didn't just thank him for that fight, but I thanked him for giving me an opportunity in Brisbane, and I thanked him for the full camp going into this one. And I think Joe's a man of few words. He's very busy. He's definitely engulfed in work and matching fights. He's got a lot of divisions and a lot of fighters to deal with. Just thanking him and letting him know that you appreciate his work and the opportunities that he gives you, and I think that's enough. So hopefully he goes, hopefully he picks up the email I sent him in the last couple of days and gives me what I want. So that happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've sort of heard about it, and what's next is you've been wanting a specific opponent next. Maybe we should just sort of touch on that, Damien, because maybe our listeners haven't heard some of the call out that you've put out. But what does that email say to Joe Silver? Who do you want to fight next?
I don't really call people out, so to speak. But I'd like to fight, someone that's going to help my profile. There's plenty of guys I think I can beat, but I don't know. I said it on Twitter. I wouldn't mind fighting someone like Sage Northcutt. It's a respectful thing, man. I don't have anything against anyone. I don't fight with any animosity. I don't hate anyone. But at the end of the day, business is business, and I think the guy's beatable. I think I'd knock him out on the feet. If he goes to the ground, I think he would be in a whole world of hurt. So maybe someone like him, a win against him would build me up and make the world sort of look and take notice again.
I mean, it makes sense. Obviously, he's got a high profile. He's getting a lot of promotion from the UFC, so it makes sense that you'd want that. We were there in Vegas when he fought last time. What did you think of that performance?
It was like watching two 12-year-olds grapple, man. It was freaking horrible. But it was, and once again, nothing against him. Like the guy's built himself well. He's got a good image. The UFC's promoting him well. He's a bit of a poster boy. I think it's awesome. I'd love to be in his position, but at the end of the day, I'm a fighter first and foremost before I'm a model, and I think I could put him away. I think I'll put him away inside the first easily. If it goes into the second, well, I don't think he'll have the cardio to laugh with me. So, we'll see what happens. I don't think the fight will come to. I think they'll probably give me someone else first, but hopefully hopefully my knockout was enough of a statement for them to go, okay, well, maybe we're giving someone to see what he's got. So we'll see what happens. There's a couple of names I threw out there. I don't know if I even am in a position to ask for opponents yet, but if you don't ask, you don't get. So hopefully, hopefully we'll move up to the Fox Sports prelims or something like that on the Australian card and get a good opponent.
Yeah, certainly. It'll be interesting to see who you get. Now, let's just jump back to this big win against Caesar, because you took time away from your full-time job to prepare for your fight. Just curious, was this the first time you'd taken time off to prepare for a fight?
Yeah, 100%. I've never taken time off for a fight yet, ever. It was 6, nearly 7 years now I've been going, and I haven't had a full camp without working yet. So 8 weeks of training only was pretty special. It was a pretty great opportunity. I got my 8 hours, 9 hours sleep every night, my recovery sessions, getting 4 hours a day in, training consistently. Nutrition was good. Nothing in that 12, 13 weeks could have been more perfect, honestly. I had no injuries, no nothing. Nothing could have been more perfect. And then to go over there and get the victory was, just really capped off the reason why I believed in myself. So.
What were those weeks like for you? Because, and we'll touch on your work and your career in a second, but, you work 12-hour shifts, which is insane that you have to find the time to train around that and, of course, eat and then, of course, sleep. So you'd think, in theory, it would be somewhat easier just taking the time off work and just focusing on training, but you're still training. It's still intense training. Well, what were those weeks like for you?
Man, it was... the weeks were crazy. To have, to train and not have to think about, normally, for instance, when I'm working a 12-hour shift, I've got to think about, have I done enough grappling this week? Have I done enough striking this week? It's always, have I done enough of something? Or how am I going to eat tomorrow around my 12-hour shift? Or, where's my weight at today? It's always a thinking game, whereas when I was off work, I didn't have to think about anything. I just turned up to... Sorry, guys. Dropped my phone.
Yeah.
I just turned up to work, turned up to the gym, did the classes that were on that night. And, I see my striking coach twice a week around that. And the rest just sort of came together. It was effortless. I didn't have to think of anything. And that reduced the stress as well. So, it was perfect, man. It couldn't have been any better, really.
Well, it makes sense that it would have reduced the stress because, as Casper mentioned, your career path, for those that don't know, you're a prison officer. Damien, just curious, what made you want to work in a prison? And was it something that you chose, or was it one of those jobs that you just sort of fell into because it was at the right place at the right time?
It was sort of just one of those jobs that, my wife's family member, he works out there. Mm-hmm. And so, for 6 or 7 years I'd talked about it. And I guess it just got to a point where the military was no longer a decent option. They were making it difficult for me to do, to fight overseas and all that sort of stuff. So I needed a job. And they came up at the same time. So it was sort of like that job was there when I needed a job, so that made it convenient. And then what made it even better was that job's 3 days a week, so I only work a 6-day fortnight. So it doesn't sound like much, but 12-hour shifts, you don't really get to train around that. So it was just a job of convenience that allowed me to train enough at the time. So it wasn't really something that I'd spent my entire life aspiring to be a prison officer or anything. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
How do you find working there? I mean, I guess a lot of people have a lot of assumptions. Is it mentally draining there? Is it something that maybe people wouldn't expect?
Look, I think it depends on the type of person you are, really, to be honest with you. If you're the type of person that's... look, my hobby on the side is violence. You know what I mean? So when you spend your life in a violent sport, and you're comfortable with violence, it's not so bad. But it's these guys that
they go out there and they're not real comfortable with violence, and then they're faced with it every now and then. That's difficult for them. That's where the high stress environment comes in. For me, I'm comfortable with violence. I accept that, in a job like that, to start with, although it's not right, first of all, you need to accept that one day something just may happen to you. And then, on top of that, as long as you're comfortable with yourself and you're comfortable in your own ability, it allows you to talk to these people on a normal human being level. And as long as you treat them like they're humans, and as hard as that may be, but that's our job and that's why we're professional. If you treat them like they're humans, and they'll just treat you the same. And that's exactly the way it is. If you start treating them like they're criminals, then they're going to treat you like you're the enemy, kind of thing.
Well, the next logical question is, are the inmates allowed to watch the UFC fights? And do you know if they watched you get your win at UFC 201?
Well, no, they're not allowed to watch UFC because they've only got normal television. So they wouldn't see it, but they do watch Bellator because it's on 1HD. So, they keep up with the MMA world a little bit, I guess, from that point of view and whatever's on the news, but they wouldn't know otherwise. So.
Do they know that you're an MMA fighter? Do they at least know that you fought on the card?
I think they got, like I tell everyone, prisoners aren't silly, man. They're a lot smarter than people like to give them credit for. Street smart, if anything. Yeah. And they know what's going on. So it's not really something that's spoken about. They don't go, if they ask me if I'm a fighter, I don't say yes. I always say no. And they go, what about your ears? Is the common one. And I just say, I'm a rugby player. So, it's like, even though I deny it, they know full well that I'm telling lies. Yeah. But they just kind of like go with it. You know what I mean? It's like a unspoken of kind of thing. But yeah, they're not silly. And there's guys where I work that have been in the fight game before, so they know.
You can't fool them. Yeah.
Well, from where we sit, we haven't been around the prison system too much, and I think a lot of our audience hasn't either. So what would you say prison life resembles more, Oz or Orange is the New Black?
Prison life is not like Orange is the New Black.
Damn it.
So by that logic, it must be Oz, right?
Oz. I haven't seen Oz.
Oz was back in the day. Oz was like on SBS. Yeah, Oz was pretty full on. It definitely wasn't Orange is the New Black.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. But it's definitely not like Orange is the New Black.
Right. What would you say is a common and we'll get off the prison talk in just a second, Damien. What is a common misconception that people often have about prisoners or prisons that you found not to be true? Obviously, you mentioned one of them is, if you treat people with respect, they'll treat you back like that. Is there anything else that people might be like, wow, I didn't expect that about working in a prison or prisoners?
I think, I don't know. I think maybe people think they're worse than they really are. I mean, like, people think, oh, you work in a jail, everyone must be a murderer. That's not the case, High security jails have all sorts of prisoners in them, man. Murderers, crimes that you don't want to talk about, people who have got driving offences, people who have robbed places with or without weapons, people that have stole some old lady's handbag. Like, there's such a crazy variety of people that live in the same unit with each other that it's not like, oh, that unit must be full of everyone who's killed someone. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception. Everyone thinks that every prisoner is the most violent person you've ever seen in your life, and that's not the case.
I'll share a really, really, really quick story. I've actually got a bunch of driving offences, just, traffic tickets, speeding, things like that. I'm on a payment plan, which actually defaulted recently, and I got a warrant sent out for actual imprisonment. So how about that? I was almost, in theory, joining you.
One of the guys you were going to look after, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Well, there you go. and the funny thing is, man, it would not be uncommon for you to bunk with someone who's killed 3 guys.
Wow,
so Casper,
crazy.
Maybe get to that courthouse as soon as you
So
can.
I suggest you get onto that payment plan, man, and get that thing ahead a couple of weeks.
It's actually back on, so don't worry. Submission Raider continues. I'm not going to jail, but it more speaks to the point about, not everybody in prison is, I guess a killer or a murderer. Some people just, I guess it's more white collar.
Some people
crimes.
just, like different lives, rough childhood. Maybe going through a bad divorce, can't see the kids, they're stressed, they get a few driving offences, get done drink driving 3 times, and all of a sudden they're in jail. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different stories, man. Not everyone is the biggest and baddest dude in the world. So.
Well, let's talk about another previous job you had before becoming a prison officer. And you actually sort of mentioned this earlier in the interview. You were in the Australian Army. Now, from what we've heard, the Australian Army doesn't, or at least didn't really support MMA. You mentioned how you had to sort of travel around to fight and stuff like that. What was your time in the Army like? And was that one of the reasons that made you leave, the fact that you wanted to really focus on MMA?
Yeah, definitely, man. One of the major reasons why I left the military is because, well, at the time, I had a offer to fight Kazunori Yokota on Abu Dhabi Warriors. So this was like back in the day, right? So big fight for me at the time. I only had about 9 or 10 fights. Great opportunity. Managed myself, so I managed to get a hold of that fight opportunity. And I went to the Army base and asked them for the time off, and they knocked it back. And they had no reason to. I wasn't going out field. I wasn't going on operations. There was nothing on that stopped them from doing it, except the fact that they didn't want me to go away and fight. And that was about 5 months before I discharged from the military. That was the breaking point for me. That was when I realised that no matter how big my dream was and no matter how much I believed in myself and the people around me did, my work was never going to let me achieve my goals. And someone said to me once, as soon as the military becomes your second priority and something becomes your first, something else, then it's time to leave the military, because the military only care about what they can get out of you and what you can do for them. So when that happened, that was my turning point. That's when I discharged. So, sorry, mate. 1 sec. I just got a new dog.
Oh, nice.
That was when I discharged. And so that was the big turning point for me and the reason why I left. And I've never looked back. And ever since I did that, it's been great. I've been able to fight where I want to, when I want to. The prison, they give me the time off I need. And he's out here. And it's been a great decision for me. So that was why I left. I love the military. I did my tour overseas in Afghanistan, and I loved it. It was something I was going to do for the rest of my life. But unfortunately, they don't support anything outside of what's good for them.
And I guess you'd be an inspiration to a lot of people who maybe still are in the Army and the military, who are looking to maybe do something different, and they look at a Damien Brown who's left and sort of gone on to do bigger things, and maybe they might think, hey, maybe I can do this as well. But going back to your MMA career before we round things off, it seems like the goal for you, and very much the point of your career, has always been to test yourself and find out if you can compete with the best in the world. Now that you've won in the UFC and you've proven that you can do that, does that fulfill all your goals in the sport, or is there something else you'd like to achieve in MMA?
It's funny. I was having to think about that this morning. Everyone wants to be a world champion, but there's no point in being a world champion if you haven't set your life up. You know what I mean? Like, there's no point looking back and going, hey, guess what? I was the UFC world champion, but now I'm working a full-time job behind the register at Caceres so I can pay my mortgage. You know what I mean? So for me, my goals have always been, sure, I want to get there. I want to win there. I want to know that I can compete there. But I would have been happy if I got there and I lost 2 in a row and they cut me. I would have been content to go, hey, you know what? I can't compete with the best. But that's fine because I got there and I had my shot. But now that I've got there and I've got my win, which I always believed that I could, I'm super keen to see how far I can take it. But I don't want to leave this sport without fighting, good fights. That's why I asked for every interview I've done since, get me good fights. Get me guys that people know, so when I win, people know me. And if I don't win, people go, you know what? He lost to that guy. Who cares? So, you know, I just want to be remembered, and I want to be able to use my position in the sport to, you know, raise awareness for veterans, and that's you know, it's close to my heart. There's a lot of veterans out there at the moment that are doing it tough. We've had 6 times the amount of suicides since the war than we had in the war. So,
wow.
I think raising awareness for them and trying to help them out is a big deal. Our government's not doing the best job at supporting these guys when they leave the military. So, yeah, I think if I can, you know, go on now to use my position to either inspire them or gain some awareness and you know, somehow make the government take some responsibility, then that'd be nice. But, you know, I'm definitely not content with just achieving my goals. You know, I'm just ticking goals off as I go. The end goal is, you know, to be set up financially, fighting full time, and then start looking towards a world title. So, yeah, right now I'm just focused on my next goal, which is to fight full time. I just want to be able to take a year or two off work and make a real run for it. So.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because we're curious what kind of time frame you'd be looking at in terms of a turnaround. And you mentioned taking some time off work. Will they, maybe if you used up all your annual leave, will your work give you another 8 weeks off to go train and prepare full time for your next fight, if it is going to be around that November period?
Yeah, my work will give me, 6 to 8 weeks, as long as it fits in with their leave plan. You know, like all employees are equal at the end of the day. So as long as it fits in with their leave plan, they've agreed to give me 6 to 8 weeks off of my camps. And if I don't have any, annual leave left, then they'll give it to me without pay, which is fine. You know, for a camp, I can go without that income. I just can't do it all year round. So I've set up my life outside of fighting. You know, fighting really is a hobby for me. So it's not like I have to win fights to pay my bills. You know, winning fights keeps the dream alive, so I can go there and fight for fun. So, yeah, it's definitely at least for the next 2 fights. I'll get 6 to 8 weeks off, and hopefully I'll get 2 more devastating wins, and maybe UFC will hook me up with a good enough contract so I can take like a year off work. So it's just little steps at a time, you know. But work's definitely supporting me, so we'll see how we go.
Beautiful. And this is for November. This is when you're aiming to be back for the November card in Australia?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd love to fight before then, but you know, I think it's a little bit rough to try and expect them to have me back at work for 3 weeks and give me another 8 off. So you know, I try and do the right thing by them as well and go back to work for sort of 6 to 8 weeks before I ask for some more time off. So I'm aiming at November at this stage. I'm just trying to spread out my next 2 fights, like, you know, every sort of 4 to 5 months, and concentrate on them and put everything I've got into them and make sure that I can secure myself a bigger and better deal. So, yeah, definitely aiming at November at this stage. I'd love to be able to take a short notice fight, but I just can't. So, November it is.
Awesome. Well, I mean, all rumors point to November, or the November card being somewhere here, whether it's Melbourne, Sydney, who knows, maybe even New Zealand. So we'd be definitely thrilled to have you back here fighting locally, Damien. And it's great to hear that obviously you've accomplished some of your goals in the sport, but now you've got new ones to look forward to. We appreciate the time. Guys, don't forget to follow Damien on Twitter at Beatdown155 and check out all his updates. And of course, you've got an Instagram. Is that correct, Damien?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Beatdown155 is my tag on all of them.
All the same. Very nice. We appreciate your time, Damien. Thank you so much for chatting with us, and we'll definitely do it in the future.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Hi, this is Conor Nelson, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, the UFC Welterweight division is currently in one of its wildest and most exciting times, with a new champion just crowned, a sea of contenders, and the return of Nate Diaz looming ahead. And so we figured, who better to discuss it with than the man who started it all and was the first to hold the UFC Welterweight belt, the UFC Hall of Famer himself. Pat Miletic returns to the program. Pat, welcome back to Submission Radio. How's it going today?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me, bud.
Well, yeah, Pat, welcome to the program. Now, before we talk about everything welterweight, we saw you getting ready for something called the Leadville Run. Now, for people removed from the action here in Australia, can you explain what exactly does this run entail, and how long have you been preparing for it?
All right, first of all, not to be offensive, But we have to fix your accent.
But what's that saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, Pat.
There's a few. What aspects of the accent would?
Well, in America we call it the Leadville 100.
Okay.
Because Leadville was known for its mining, which a lot of it was iron ore and lead. So they pulled a lot of lead out of the ground. So, but the Leadville 100 basically, and I'm obviously just joking because I love Aussies.
yeah,
but,
of course.
Aussie women. But anyway, the Leadville 100 is a 100-mile race. You go out 50 miles, turn around and come back 50 miles. But the problem is, obviously 100 miles is very difficult.
Yeah.
There's no real resting. There's no sitting down. There's no sleeping, any of that. It's not like it's in stages. You just keep moving. But more than anything, it's 2 miles up in altitude or higher, and the air is about 30% less than where I live, or I would say 30% less oxygen, or 30% oxygen from where I live. So if you were at 800-foot altitude in Australia, at 100% oxygen levels, you would be at 30% at Leadville. I don't know.
It just keeps getting worse and worse.
There's just no oxygen, basically.
So I guess the question is, why would somebody want to put themselves through something like that? 100 miles, no oxygen. Why are you doing it, Pat?
Well, I lived a life of intensity, I guess. I'm addicted to adrenaline. I love chasing tornadoes. I love flying planes. I love mixed martial arts fighting. I've always, for some reason, found the things that gave me adrenaline dumps, and I enjoy doing things that scare me a lot. So I guess the thing that scares me the most is combating myself for 100 miles at 2 miles altitude, and so that's what I did. And I've got several friends that do that race. They're very good at it. They're ultra marathon freaks. And so I thought, let me jump on your coattails, jump in with you, and have fun, and let's do this thing.
That is a hell of a respectable thing. I mean, me and Dennis struggle to run 1 mile, let alone 100. And if we did that,
you speak for yourself. I've run 2 miles before.
I would probably take like some kind of.
That's good.
It was a cold day. I felt motivated, Pat. Had good music on.
Have you done anything like this before, Pat, or is this going to be a first for you? Are you climbing Mount Everest first time?
No, here's the thing is, I started training September of last year, and at that time I would run about 3 miles and would be basically crippled for about 2 or 3 days. I would do my best to come back and train again. But what I found out was, in America here, and I'm sure that some Australians have heard, that we have a thing called genetically modified organisms. That is the GMOs, the grains. I don't know. I don't think it's legal in Australia, right? Or is it?
I'm not too sure, but I have heard of them. That's about all I can say.
We have weird organic stores, Pat, so I'm pretty sure it's happening here.
Yeah. Okay, so wheat and soy products contain genetically modified organisms, meaning there's a protein added called gluten, which adversely affects the human body. And it's in literally everything we eat, okay? So I'd had 3 forms of arthritis, respiratory problems, stomach problems, and even to be honest with you, the guy that did the blood tests on me and when the results came back asked me how my temper had been lately. And when I told him that, I've had a bit of a temper lately for the past couple of years, he said, okay, well, now that it has affected your brain, that's the last step. The next step is you're going to have a heart attack. You'll be dead within 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so the problem with genetically modified grains is they don't belong in our bodies. Anything processed, anything with a label on it, should not be put in your body. So what I would advise all Australians to do is buy fresh vegetables and meats and fish and poultry and strictly consume that, because the effects that it was doing, that it was having on me was basically killing me. Okay, I was 225 pounds and miserable, and when I quit it, it took about a week for all of my problems to go away. And so my respiratory cleared up, my arthritis cleared up, every problem that I had, and then, now I can go out and run 75 miles, wake up the next day and have zero pain.
Wow.
Do you sort of wish that you knew that during your fighting career, when you were fighting?
Yeah, because the probably the last, when you're young, your body can bounce back, right? But toward my late 30s, 40s, things started to go off the rails, and the body doesn't regenerate quite as easily, obviously. And I found out real quick that I was not invincible. But now at 50 years old, because I'm not eating gluten, I can almost do anything. There's no way in hell at 25 years old I could go out and run 75 miles. I just couldn't do it. And now I can go out and run 75 miles and actually wake up the next day and get on a plane and go do a broadcast and have no problems.
Wow. It's Pat Miletic 2.0. Now, Pat, we want to have a chat with you about some of the exciting things happening in the welterweight division. But before we jump to it, I just want to quickly find out, obviously the division has a lot of exciting talent, a lot of big names. Does a part of you sort of wish you were around fighting in this day and age of the welterweight division? Are there any names that sort of pop out when you watch them and you go, oh man, I wish I was around as an active fighter right now, because this guy would be so much fun to fight?
I've never really put much thought into that. I mean, at this point in my life, it seems like a different life altogether. Obviously, I've trained law enforcement and military for probably 20 years. I have a company called Firehorse Combatives, and we've trained everybody from local, state, federal law enforcement all the way up to SEAL Team 6, and had our fun, and it's an amazing experience. So I get my adrenaline dumps in other ways, but no, there's really nobody out there now that I would say, yes, I would love to fight, anything like that. And I don't regret anything that I ever did. I reached all my goals as a fighter and as a coach. So that part of my life is done, and I'm fine. And I love watching the fights. I love calling the fights, and I'm perfectly content with where I'm at.
Well, I mean, speaking of active fighters, a fighter that you obviously know very well is Robbie Lawler. There's been a lot going on as late in the division, with Tyron Woodley obviously shocking the MMA community and beating Robbie to become the champion. We've got to get your thoughts, Pat. What did you make of that fight? And, much like many of us, did you believe that Robbie was going to beat him?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. When I started calling Tyron Woodley's fights on CBS Showtime, which is a very big network here in the United States, I said that if I were to be able to be God and build the perfect prototype fighter, it would be Tyron Woodley. Okay, and I said that years ago. And he's a very intelligent guy. He's an amazing athlete. He's a good-looking guy. He's well-spoken. He's bright. He's very marketable. So he is a perfect example of the ideal mixed martial artist, right? So, having said that, people were asking my advice or my idea on how the fight would go, and I said if Tyron is going to get Rob, he's going to have to get him early, because Tyron is very explosive. He's all fast twitch muscle, and the longer the fight goes, the more tired Tyron gets. And if Tyron doesn't get him early, he's not going to get him. And I think his camp knew that, with Duke Rufus being his coach, his striking coach, Duke, I'm sure, advised him, look, get on Rob early, try and hurt him, and use feints and fakes. And Rob bit on a fake and wasn't paying attention and got clipped with a big right hand and got hurt. That's, both those guys, Rob and Tyron, both, if they hit you with a solid shot, you're going to get hurt. And Rob did not see the punch coming. It was very clear his peripheral vision was not there, and did not see it coming and got clipped and got put down. And Rob was very coherent when he got up and did the interview, knew exactly what happened, and said, you know what, I'll go back to the drawing board. I made a mistake, and I bit on a feint, and Tyron caught me with the right hand, and it is what it is. Both, guys at that level, guys with that power, explosiveness, you just don't take a 4-ounce glove with their hand in it and walk away.
Obviously, a tough loss for Robbie, but yeah, he handled it like a champion. Curious, did you get a chance to speak to him after the fight at all, or on the phone or anything like that, and to sort of gauge how he's doing after the loss?
He's fine. He's fine. And I don't bug guys. The guys that I've trained in the past, I don't bug them. I just tell them I love them, and that's really what it comes down to. And they know that I'm thinking about them, and they're leading their lives. He's taking care of his wife and his kid and doing his thing. I just let him know I care about him and thinking about him, and that's really what it comes down to. I don't have long drawn out conversations with guys about what they did right or what they did wrong. That's our coach's job now. I do not take that role and stay away from really all of that.
Mm-mm-mm. A lot of people obviously wondering how much longer Robbie will be fighting for, seeing as he's had huge wars and he's had a very long career. He's been in the sport for a very long time. Do you think it's possible that we'll see him become the UFC welterweight champion once more before he retires?
You know what? I'd be willing to bet that he will. I mean, I would definitely put money on that. When Matt Hughes became the world champion for the first time, he had lost a couple fights in a row and had basically retired and was on a corn combine back home on the farm in southern Illinois, here in the middle of the United States. And I called him and said, "You're fighting for the title that I had just lost." And he said, "No, that's your title." He knew I had an automatic rematch clause in my contract, but I said, they're not allowing that, but they're willing to let you take the shot at Carlos Newton, and you can come back and do it if you want. And we argued for about 45 minutes, and he came back and did it, won the world title, made I think a 3-year run, lost the title to BJ, then came back, beat BJ, and made another 2-year run before St-Pierre took it from him. So, guys, there is definitely something in the water, and Rob's a winner through and through, and I think he'll be invigorated by it when he goes back and licks his wounds. He'll come back and be better than ever.
Just quickly, Pat, on that, it's an infamous story where the UFC sort of got you to go up to middleweight, I believe, and Matt got that welterweight shot. Why exactly didn't they let you have that automatic rematch? Because a lot of fans are sort of confused as to why they didn't give you an opportunity to win that title back straight away.
Well, the deal was they called me and they said, okay, Las Vegas, you and Carlos Newton in the rematch. And I said, absolutely. Hung up the phone, so I just basically assumed that I was going to be fighting Carlos for the rematch in Las Vegas. Then they called me back later that day and said, okay, we just discovered a problem. The main event, co-main event fights are you and Carlos Newton and Randy Couture and Pedro Hizzo, the exact same co-main event that happened in New Jersey at the Trump Taj Mahal. And we don't want to look like we don't have enough athletes. Mm-hmm. And that was their lame excuse. But it was basically, we'll give you the option. Either you can put Matt Hughes in your spot, or we're going to pick a fighter from another camp to come in and fight Carlos, and then you can have the winner. Well, when you put a coach, I'm the coach of Matt Hughes at the time,
yeah,
and I promised Matt I'd make him a world champ. I knew that Matt could beat Carlos, and so when they put that ball in my lap, I said, you know what, I've got to do the right thing. I promised Matt I'd make him a world champ. Let's put Matt in that slot, and if Matt loses, which I don't think he's going to, but if he loses, then I'll come back and I'll beat Carlos and take the title back. And so that's the way history went. And once Matt came back and won the title, basically what I said to the company was, look, I'll be the gatekeeper. I don't ever need to be world champion again. I'm fine with playing second fiddle. And they said, no, you've already trained yourself out of that weight division. You have Rob Lawler, Matt Hughes, and Jason Black, who are all ranked in the top 10 in the world. You've basically coached yourself out of a weight division. So either go up to 185 or we're going to cut you. And I walked around at like 190. So I'm not big enough for that weight division. So by the time I got in, basically it was, by the time I got in the cage against Matt Lindland, my soul had basically been taken already. I really didn't care anymore at that point. And that's just being honest.
Yeah.
Had I been at 170, you know, I'd had fun being the gatekeeper and fighting young and up-and-comers and beating some guys up. But things were essentially done at that point just because I had no control anymore.
Wow. I'm just wondering, you mentioned before that the UFC used that lame excuse about not having the same two obviously fights back-to-back. What do you think the real reason was? Because it seemed pretty clear that they wanted you out of that division.
Well, either way, it doesn't, you know, hindsight's 20/20, but it really doesn't matter.
Right. Sure.
Ultimately, I think that, you know, my talks with Dana White previously, I spoke very highly of Matt. I spoke about, you know, his potential to dominate that division and be a star, and they probably took that and ran with it, which is fine, you know.
Well, jumping back to 2016, and now the big question is who exactly Tyron should fight next. He's mentioned wanting to fight Nate Diaz or George St-Pierre, and then, of course, there's Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who's the actual #1 contender. Pat, if you were in the matchmaker's shoes, who do you give the next title shot to out of those three?
Well, I'm going to give it to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. If I'm Tyron Woodley, I want to fight George St-Pierre and make big money, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that Tyron has a good shot against him, given that George has been out for several years. Nick Diaz cannot stop Tyron's takedowns, so Tyron can control him. But Wonderboy, I tell you what, Wonderboy is going to give him fits. That is a tough fight, and if Tyron is fighting guys like that, and a couple of the other guys in the division that he's going to have trouble with striking-wise, who can wrestle, he may run into some problems. And you know, like I say, matchups really make fights. And there's certain guys that Tyron matches up with very well, and certain guys he does not match up with.
I mean, we don't buy into the idea that Tyron is afraid of facing Stephen Wonderboy Thompson or any of the division's best, but the current debate is, if champions choose big paydays over facing the #1 contenders and the best in their division, does this hurt the sport and its integrity in any way? Where do you stand on that, Pat?
Well, that's where a sanctioning body needs to be established, a global sanctioning body that is a non-profit organization where pay your officers well, make it a non-profit, get corporate sponsors for the belts, and make the best fight the best. And you know, with it being non-profit, it can't be corrupted nearly as bad as boxing has been corrupted. And that's where you're going to get the best fights, right? And then, along with the Ali Act being enacted in the sport, now people with money can bid for athletes, and the athletes are going to get the money they deserve, and they won't have the champions clauses and all the other garbage that would get laughed out of any other professional sports negotiating room. So there's things that need to happen in the sport to improve the sport, to take it to the next level, and it's going to happen. It's just when.
Well, Tyron is obviously choosing GSP and Nick Diaz because of the monetary benefits that each big money fight brings. And this seems like a very new age mentality compared to the past. Fighters are now putting money and paydays before titles. Just curious, Pat, when you were competing, what was your primary goal? The glory of becoming champion or choosing the fight that makes the most money?
Well, the belt was most important, and two, I fought who the company told me to fight. And that's really what my entire camp did. I mean, we had 90 guys make it to televised careers, and I think, depending on how you look at it, 11 to 14 world champions. And none of my guys ever turned down a fight. They fought who they were told to fight, and that's the way we did business. So, but having said that, if Tyron Woodley can go out and make $10 million fighting George St-Pierre, hey, you know what? He's the guy with the belt. If he can call the shots, do you blame him for taking care of his family? No.
Looking at some of the other options, I mean, Woodley mentioned that Wonderboy should fight Robbie Lawler next. If Stephen Thompson doesn't get his title shot like yourself and many other people believe he should, do you think he should fight again, or is that a bit too risky?
Well, if I'm Stephen Thompson, I'm going to sit back and say, you know what, I'm the number one contender. I'm not going to fight until I get a title shot, period. I'll let my contract run out. I don't even care. You've got to know where you've got leverage, and Stephen Thompson needs to be the squeaky wheel that gets grease. He needs to start talking smack. He needs to understand his position of power to a certain extent, and I think that he could probably end up in the position he wants to be if he plays it right.
He's such a nice guy. I've had him on the show multiple times. He is just the ultimate gentleman. Do you think that kind of hurts him in and his marketability just slightly in today's MMA where it's all about the big personalities?
Well, in today's society, look, I mean, come on. Rappers and the Kardashians in America get a ton of attention, and so basically thugs and hookers get all the attention, but
yeah.
which is pretty disturbing. Can Thompson put a little edge on it at least? Yes, he could. He could say, look, Tyron Woodley's ducking me. He knows I'm going to knock him out. That's just the way it is. I'm going to take his title. He'll have the shortest reign as champion, and I'll take it from him. And he knows it. He's ducking me. He's trying to fight George St-Pierre, who's past his prime, and Nate Diaz, who he can take down easier than my sister, and that's what he's doing. He's looking for easy paydays. He's afraid of me, and he needs to understand how to talk and pump things up.
Well, in a couple of weeks' time, Conor McGregor is fighting Nate Diaz, UFC 202, and of course the bout takes place at welterweight. There were some talks a while ago of him moving all the way up to welterweight and maybe even fighting Robbie Lawler for the belt. If he's able to beat Nate Diaz at 170, what do you think that says about his chances against the best there? And do you think he can have success at welterweight?
No, he's going to get his ass beat by Nate again. And even if he were to get lucky and beat Nate, he fights guys that cut down from, you know, some of the guys at 170 are cutting down from 210, 215 pounds. I mean, you're talking skull fractures from punches from guys like that. I mean, the 170 pounders who walk around at 200 plus could punch a heavyweight and break his jaw and knock him out. So these are explosive, very strong guys who, if Conor McGregor even remotely attempts to take them down, he's going to get shut down. And if he gets hit with a three-punch combo, is going to the hospital. So, you know, I tell you what, though, I will say this. Conor McGregor has sold the sport. He's sold himself. I think he's brought some of the Chael Sonnen WWE from Ireland into it, which is great. And, more power to him. I love the guy, actually.
But obviously you don't see him winning at UFC 202. You see Nate picking up the victory. How do you think he does it? He did it in less than 2 rounds last time around. Do you think it's going to be quicker, shorter? How do you think it's going to play out, Pat?
Oh, I think Conor's going to come in very motivated, bigger, stronger, and but he's not going to be able to hurt Nate. And look, dude, I'm training for a 100-mile run in 2 miles altitude, right? The Diaz brothers do stuff like that on a regular basis. You cannot get them tired. You cannot hurt them. What can Conor McGregor do to Nate Diaz that doing a 50-mile or 75-mile run can't do to him. There's something different that happens mentally, and I'm learning that now, where training for a fight and getting in a cage is honestly, now when I look back on things, is kind of a joke.
So
you go.
Go on.
I was just going to say a joke in what way?
The mind games that you play with yourself. When you go to war with yourself when you're running for 24 hours straight, and the demons that you deal with out on a country road in the middle of nowhere while you're running in 95-degree heat. I'm talking Fahrenheit. You guys are Celsius, but 95-degree heat with 95% humidity, and you've already been running for 60 miles, and you've got 20, 30, 40 more to go. Outsmarting another human being, intimidating them, and beating their asses is really not that tough. I can tell you that right now. Had I been doing this stuff during my career, fighting would have been so much easier. So much easier.
Wow.
Yeah, we would have seen Pat Miletic in the Olympics doing the big marathon and then winning the UFC Welterweight title. Now, Pat, before
obviously that's in jest to a certain extent, but I mean, I was running 3 miles in 16 minutes when I was in my prime. I could fly.
Wow.
But running 50 miles and up, there's something different that happens to you mentally. Physically, of course, there's massive amounts of abuse, but mentally you become a different person. You become a different animal, and there's no amount of pain that you can't withstand.
Wow.
Well, before we let you go, Pat, and we really appreciate the time, but for the fans listening right now, what else is going on that they could tune into? What else should they be looking out for? We know you're doing some great commentary work, but is there anything coming out soon the fans should be keeping an eye out for?
Well, I'm doing Fire Horse Combatives. We're training law enforcement and military. We've trained law enforcement and military all over the world, so we'd love to come to Australia and train the police there and the military. It's very high level. We've trained everybody from, like I said, local, state, and federal departments all the way up to the elite special forces here in the United States. And so I'd love to come there, and then also have my podcast, which is called The Conspiracy Farm. We talk about everything that the mainstream media will not educate the people on. So all the bullshit that's going on, we're opening up people's eyes, and if people go to, even the people in Australia can go to YouTube and punch up The Conspiracy Farm, listen to our podcast, and then do research for themselves, and they'll say, wow, these guys actually know what they're talking about, because the mainstream media is feeding everyone full of shit, and we're here to expose them and help the citizens educate themselves on what's really going on.
And Pat, is this a weekly podcast? How often does it come out and what days?
We do it weekly, but we've held off because I'm training for the Leadville 100. The training's been pretty grueling, so things have slowed down on that. We'll pick it back up beginning of September on a weekly basis. Every Tuesday, we'll release a new podcast, and I think people will find it very interesting, very educational. And a lot of politicians, actually, in the United States have started messaging me saying that they're listening to my podcast and being educated by my podcast.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Well, we'll have to have a listen, Pat, and bring up a few of the theories next time we get you back on the show to really have a chat about it. Guys, make sure to follow Pat on Twitter at Pat Miletic. Best of luck in the race. We're curious to see how you do, Pat, and also we really appreciate the time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, guys, I appreciate it. And sorry for sounding loopy, but I just got done running about 25 miles, so I'm a little out of it.
Man, that's totally fine. We respect the fact that you're willing to do the interview and obviously give us so much of your time after running 25 miles. So again, thank you so much, Pat. We'll definitely speak to you in the future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Hi guys, it's Jana Jędrzejczyk, UFC strawweight champion. Listen to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is coming to us live from one of the most important places near Stockton, California. He is a stone's throw away in Montega, the home of Richard Perez Boxing, which is, of course, where Nate Diaz is currently training to face Conor McGregor in their rematch at UFC 202. And with us is Nate's longtime boxing coach and the man who will be cornering him, Richard Perez. Richard, welcome back to the program. How's it going?
Thank you. I'm doing good.
Well, Richard, paint the picture for us. You're 2 weeks out from the fight. What's the scene like currently at the gym? Is the mood getting more and more serious as the day gets closer? And have there been a lot of Stockton natives coming down to the facility trying to capture a glimpse of Nate preparing for one of the biggest cards of the year?
He's always serious when it comes to training. He just has more time this time. It's a lot better. The camp is better. The training's better because he can focus more, because he has more time.
Well, I mean, of course, Nate Diaz and, of course, his brother Nick, in a lot of ways, they've put Stockton on the map. Do you get a lot more traffic, a lot of people traffic, people coming in to the gym and, trying to catch a glimpse of Nate working out?
Yeah, I do. Sometimes I have to lock it up, keep them out.
It's interesting because, obviously, there's been a lot of time, extra time that Nate has had to prepare for this fight, but also he's done a lot more media. He's been on all the big shows like Jimmy Kimmel and such. Have you found that that's sort of taken away from your time training, or has that been scheduled in a way that it hasn't really interfered?
No, it doesn't interfere because I go up there and train with him wherever he goes.
Wow, so whereabouts are you guys training? Are you guys training on the set of the shows or in and around there?
No, boxing gyms.
Okay. Just checking. Now, before we even get to before we even got to this point, there have been, a lot of unexpected twists and turns since the last time we spoke to you. First, the rematch was set for UFC 200. Then the rematch was cancelled. Then there were the ridiculous rumors that McGregor was fighting Floyd Mayweather, and this rematch wasn't even happening. What was your reaction when they finally announced that this is going to happen on August 20th? And was there ever a moment where you thought this fight would never happen?
Well, sure, in the back of my head it does, but I figure, well, just, give it a chance to see how far it goes. If it goes all the way, then we're ready. But if not, depend on McGregor, I figured he might back out, but so far he hasn't.
Well, when we spoke to you last time, you said that the fight you wanted next for Nate was whichever one would bring in the most money, and that you and Nate were tired of getting chump change. Considering how big this fight is going to be, do you feel like Nate and yourself are getting the money that you guys deserve?
We should get more, but it's not where it's at. I mean, he's getting it, but not like he should.
I guess the big assumption was because this fight took so long to get together, and obviously there was the meetings between Nate Diaz and Dana White. People, I guess, were under the assumption that that the money must be right. Whereabouts is the money as far as you're concerned? What kind of percentage? If 100% is perfectly happy Richard Perez and Nate Diaz, whereabouts are you guys?
What do you mean?
You're saying that Nate Diaz and yourself should be getting more. How far off, I guess, are you?
Oh, it's. I mean, if you think about it, you watch all the fights. I mean, they're making more money pay-per-view than than Mayweather and them. I mean, and he should be making a lot more. At least, they should be. At least he should be making, 10 million, 15 million. Heck, no, not even close.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a huge fight, like we mentioned, and a lot has changed for Nate since UFC 196. He's become one of the UFC's biggest stars, and he even did it at the late night show with Conor McGregor, which is a big deal because previously only fighters like Ronda Rousey, Chuck Liddell, and Conor McGregor have appeared on it. We're just wondering, Richard, give us your analysis of Nate's performances on these shows. How have you liked what he's been able to do on the mainstream, I suppose, publicity circuit?
Oh, he's doing fine. I mean, there's nothing interfering as far as training, and as far as him being on shows, it's not that long, So he's doing good.
I'm sure that obviously you as a trainer, you're more impressed with what his, in-ring accomplishments have been. But did it make you proud seeing him on such a big platform and getting that kind of exposure?
Sure. I mean, because he deserves it. It's about time. He's been fighting everybody. There was times he was fighting three times a year, 4 times a year. Nobody's done that.
It's interesting because Nate's a humble guy, doesn't really like to sort of get out there, doesn't really like to pump himself up too much, but you're a humble guy as well. With all the success that Nate Diaz has gotten, Richard Perez Boxing has got a lot of success as well. A lot of people talking about the amazing job that you've done with him and the great facility that you have over there. How have you dealt with the added attention and people sort of coming up to you wanting more photos and just sort of wanting to hang out?
Well, it's fine. I mean, I accept them coming in here. I'm not gonna put anybody down or tell them to get out, or they don't. I treat everybody like I want to be treated. So when they come in, they like me because I'm not going to be cocky, or I just want to respect them just like I want them to respect me.
Before Nate did the Conan O'Brien show, I'm just wondering, did you guys talk about it at all? Did he say anything to you about it that, hey, I'm going to be on Conan O'Brien?
Yeah, he told me he was going to be there. That's why we went to L.A. I mean, we went up there because I knew he was going to be there, so we wanted to train. We didn't want to stop the training.
I'm just curious, what was Nate sort of, how did he bring it up to you that he's going to be on Conan, Because, like we mentioned, he has done a lot of media, but it's not really something that I guess would be his first choice to do. Was he nervous about doing the big show?
Well, he didn't say he was nervous. He just said, I'm going to be on the show. And I said, okay. How long are you going to be? So an hour, all right. So he was there, and we already trained, and so he came back and to the hotel, and that was it.
Sure.
And trained next
while
day.
While he was on the show, Richard, he said something interesting. He said that before a fight, he usually expects to get knocked out so that he can be pleasantly surprised whether he wins or doesn't get knocked out. Considering he's only ever been knocked out once in his entire career, can you explain why Nate would have his mindset and mentality to expect to get knocked out?
Well, every fighter expects that, but they don't want to say it, like it's like an amateur. You go in there, you feel like, I might get knocked out. Okay, I got to expect that, but I got to try not to. That's normal, but nobody wants to, they're not like Nathan. Nathan speaks up, wherever feels in his mind. A lot of guys won't, but it's always in somebody, it's always in their mind. Even McGregor, everybody, even though how cocky they are. Like Mayweather, he could be really cocky, on the best. But once he gets in that ring, and before he even gets in the ring, he's going to feel like you get that feeling. So you have to be really alert.
That's interesting. What would you say are the benefits of having a mindset like that? How does it play positively into the fight?
Well, it's normal. I mean, I'm not saying about being positive, but it's normal. If you ever fought before, you would know it's just a normal thing. Just like when you interview people, you get a little nervous sometimes. Maybe you're good at it now, but you think about what I need to say, what you're going to do,
sure,
how you're going to say it to this person. You know what I mean? But boxing and MMA is more of a serious. It's a sport. It's not a game. It's a sport. It's a hard sport, and so your mind is going to think, well, I can get killed, I can get knocked out, I can get a broken leg, arm, anything. So your mind is set on that, but you have to try to focus on and not any of that stuff happening.
Yeah, it's something that the media sort of ran with and didn't. A lot of people thinking, Nate Diaz isn't as confident going into this fight as usual because he thinks he's going to get knocked out. But did that sort of give you a bit of a laugh, seeing the media and a lot of websites sort of running with that and making it seem like Nate has less confidence going into this fight because they didn't really understand that aspect of it?
Well, people are running with it because he said it, and he's way up on top. And, what I see is that it's normal to say that, but fighters won't say it. But when he said it, since he's way up on top, he beat McGregor, and then he says it, so everybody's running with it, saying, Nate thinks he's going to get knocked down. No confidence. That's not it. He's just being honest. It's any fighter being honest. Like if you're fighting and you go in the ring or a cage, what are you going to think in your mind going in there? I'm just going to go knock the guy out. I'm going to win. No. You got to think of the negative and the positive. It's not that he wasn't confident or feel like he's going to get knocked out. No, that's not it. It's just every fighter thinks that, but they don't want to speak it up. They don't want to say nothing because I don't ask me why, but believe me, it's in the back of their head.
Well, I mean, one of the things that everybody loves about the Diaz brothers is their honesty. Speaking of that honesty, soon after the show, Nate tweeted out, UFC played me again, #TrustNobody. I'm just wondering if you know what exactly was it that made Nate frustrated with the UFC, and do you know why Nate would feel like he was played?
I never asked him. I don't know because I just been training him. I don't want to, give many questions right now. So that's not important to me. What's important to me is training him, keeping focused. That's my job. So that's what I'm doing. And maybe after the fight I'll ask him, But right now, everything is just training, straight up training. I'm hardcore. I'm not gonna ask him any silly questions or what happened over there. My job is when he comes in here into my office, then he's gonna be doing what I tell him to do, and he does what he wants to, as far as training. Yeah, we don't get involved. We don't do any. I don't do any of that. I'm not that type of guy. I just want to make sure he's getting everything right and getting ready to prepare for a fight.
Well, the trash and the trash talk and the build-up hasn't been as intense as prior to UFC 196 going into this fight, UFC 202. But we were there live at the UFC 202 press conference a few weeks ago when Nate and Conor squared off for the first time since the first fight. Last time they squared off at a press conference, there was an incident where Conor threw a hand punch, which almost started a brawl. Was a part of you concerned or expecting something similar when you were there this time around for that press conference for UFC 202?
Well, the first time I expected it because of McGregor, but then the second time I felt like he wasn't going to even try, because even when he spoke, he wasn't like he was the first time. He was very low key, didn't say too much. He just kept saying he had his belt up there. Why he had his belt up there, I don't know why he's not defending it. So, but I guess he put it up there for secure. He's being secure because he's insecure about himself as the one fighting Nathan again. So why he had the belt up there? I mean, everybody thinks they're calling me and say, "Hey, Nathan's fighting for a belt." No, he's not. So Dana White shouldn't allow him to have the belt up there because everybody thinks he's fighting for a belt and he's not. So this time up, I felt that McGregor wasn't so confident because he wasn't saying too much.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you bring up because a lot of people are talking about the fact that McGregor hasn't really been as vocal, obviously, coming off the loss. Do you think it's indicative of the fact that maybe he has lost a bit of confidence from the first fight and going into this one, he may not be as confident in his abilities in this rematch with Nate Diaz, or do you think it doesn't really indicate very much?
Oh, it does, because if you watch the first fight, Nathan only had 8 days of training. They gave him like 11 days notice. He only trained for 8 days. McGregor had a whole training camp, and the first round he came out, and Nathan knew he was going to come out fast and hard. So I told we knew that. I told Nathan, let's just move, and don't try to don't tire yourself out. Set your punches up, move. Sure, you're going to get hit, but try to go with the punch. And then the second round, when I told him to pick it up, he picked it up. He already knew he was going to do it. And McGregor said he was tired. Well, of course, because if you watch the fight, Nathan wasn't just all about McGregor. Nathan was pinpointing shots, catching them with the body, and that kind of wore him out a little bit. So then the second round, Nathan set it up and caught him with the left hand, and when he did that, and the way he beat him, McGregor shot at Nathan, which nobody does because he's really good on the ground. So McGregor was trying to get a break. You can't get a break on Nathan when you go to the ground. And so that's why McGregor was on his back, and he turned on his belly because he didn't want no more. Nathan was hitting him in the face, so he just turned over like a kid and said, "I quit." That's giving up. So he totally put himself in a spot where he really got beat bad for a guy that only had 8 days of training. So now I know McGregor is really thinking about now. Nathan has a whole full camp. It's a big difference now.
Is it sort of a flip of a coin the other direction as well, with Nate beating him on 8 days' notice, now having a full training camp? Is there a worry there for you that he may be overconfident going into this one? Oh,
no. Nathan, nah. Nathan trains like he's training for a fight for every fight. He knows me. I've talked to him, and I said, McGregor's going to come out and try to fight you, and he knows it. He's not going to go out there and just say, okay, I beat him the first time in 8 days. He's got to train. He's training really hard. Believe me, he's training like he had never fought him before. So,
wow.
Because he has a full camp now.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. I mean, Nate Diaz already beat him, and you've told us before how Nate feeds off the trash talk and how it drives him in fights. The trash talk isn't really there this time. What is driving him, or what is motivating him now?
Nathan?
Yeah.
Oh, the win, it's motivating him to win. So he knows, and the time now, he's got more time to train, so that's really motivating better because he knows he's got more time. He's more confident. He's in better shape. His jabbing going to be laying out there where McGregor can throw an uppercut, throw whatever he wanted, because the first time, like he was leaning forward a little bit, because the full camp wasn't there. and that's in any fighter, you know. So if McGregor thinks that he's going to go out there and do the same thing they did last time, it's not going to happen because Nathan's prepared now. He's got more time. So now McGregor needs to look and see and say, you know, what'd I do here? You know, I gave this guy 11-day notice last time, and he knocked me out and got me on the ground and tapped me out, you know, which he shouldn't have. But now he's got a full training camp just like McGregor. So what makes McGregor think that he's going to be better than Nathan now? It's not going to happen.
Well, it seems like for a long time, money and big money fights have been a main motivator for both of the Diaz brothers. Now he's got two of them back to back. I'm wondering, Richard, what do you think Nate will look to do after this fight? Because we've seen previously that if Nate isn't happy with the options available, he's willing to walk or sit out on the sidelines. Do you think he'll make a quick turnaround after this fight and chase big paydays, or do you think he might take the time to enjoy his hard work?
Well, we won't know until it's over. I mean, I can't give you that answer. You know, I can say something and then afterwards, you know, then I'll be in a corner and everybody say, "Hey, Richard said this." No, I'll wait till after the fight's over with and see what he says.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, all right, give us the update on training. How is he looking in camp? And, you know, at this point, so close to the fight, what exactly are you guys working on and focusing on with Nate in training?
He's working on everything: his ground game, his kickboxing, his boxing, his jiu-jitsu, his wrestling. He constantly does that. He's always working on that when he get ready for a fight. So there's no change. It's just he has more time to do all of it, and that makes it better.
Obviously, a chance to improve your skills, become better every training camp you have before a fight. But if we're looking at specifics here, has Nate been doing a lot of sparring rounds leading into this fight? And have you brought in any new sparring partners to emulate Conor McGregor's style compared to the last 8 days that you had to prepare for the first fight?
Oh yes, we found some guys that fight like McGregor, same height, you know, moves a lot, you know, tries to pinpoint, tries to set counter punches up. Yeah, and same thing with jiu-jitsu, you know, same thing with the wrestling, kickboxing. You know,
if you had to count them, how many rounds would you say Nate has sparred leading up to this fight?
Oh geez, I can't even count them.
1 million, 2 million?
Oh, no. Come on now. You're a reporter. Nobody does that many.
We wouldn't put it past the Diaz brothers. All right, you told us last time that you were confident Nate was going to win the first time around. What's your confidence like this time, Richard, considering how long Nate has had to prepare?
Well, of course I'm confident because he has more time. That time is important. When it comes to fighting, time is important because you need to prepare yourself. 8 days is not time. Okay, you can't prepare yourself really. It's like a needle in a haystack trying to find a needle. I mean, but when I found out, we got right to work right away. And the 8 days we gave it all we could. He did jiu-jitsu, he did the kickboxing, did the boxing. Yes, he did it all. Wrestling. So the majority was last time was stand-up. Mostly stand-up and little some jiu-jitsu.
Nate obviously beat Conor on 8 days' notice last time, and we saw Michael Bisping also beat Luke Rockhold in a very, very short training camp. Does the fact that Nate looked pretty good against Conor McGregor with 8 days' notice, did it change any of your theories on how long a training camp should be going into a fight? Because there's a lot of trainers out there, Richard, who are looking at these long training camps and thinking, hey, maybe our fighters aren't peaking at the right time. Has it changed your mindset at all on how long and how hard you and Nate work for and the duration of that time?
No, because I know Nathan, and Nathan knows himself. You know, you have a relationship. You know, as far as me being a trainer and him being the fighter. So I know him. I know when he's trained too much and when he's not. But these guys, they're like machines. I'm telling you, they'll after he trains with me in boxing, he'll go and do jiu-jitsu. He'll be up till 2, 3 in the morning training.
We don't know if you pay attention to this, Richard, but despite Nate winning the first fight, the odds for this rematch have Conor as the favorite. Are you surprised by this?
Yes, I am. I mean, aren't you? I mean, think about it.
It's interesting to say the least. Why do you think that is?
Because Dana White and them, I guess they favor him. They like him. I guess because they say he makes money. He's a moneymaker. Well, Nathan's the same thing, but they don't give him that opportunity. You know what I'm saying? They give McGregor because he talks a lot. He gets people angry. The media and some people like it and some people don't. And so he's just all talk just to get the media up there. So then everybody feels that he can do it. Well, you know what? Actions speak louder than words. And that's the way I've always felt. So that's people are following him because what he does.
I mean, I think as far as the odds, they are more so dictated by the Vegas odds makers as opposed to the UFC per se. But I mean, what would you say to someone who's putting money on McGregor? You're seeing what Nate's doing in the gym and how he's looking. What would be your advice to any punters out there putting money down?
I wouldn't say anything. That's up to them. I would never go up to somebody, hey, what are you putting money on McGregor for? He's going to lose. No, that's what they want to do. I'm the type of person that doesn't go around and judge people what they're doing, as far as they're making a bet on somebody. People ask me, are you going to bet for Nathan? I don't bet. I can't do it. Even if I did, I wouldn't tell anybody. I'm more of myself. I keep to myself. I observe what goes around me. And that's where I am. But I focus on what I need to do, and that's boxing.
Well, speaking of this rematch, a lot of people thinking that Conor McGregor is going to look different this time around, pacing himself more, being a lot more selective with his strikes, using his footwork a lot more. What kind of Conor McGregor are you expecting in this rematch?
Well, all I know is that Nathan's going to go out there just the same. So, see, people are talking about McGregor, but what about Nathan? I mean, he's got a training camp too, so why are they making McGregor look like he's going to be better when he already got whooped in 8 days, So why they can't see that Nathan's not going to be in better shape, have better tools? Oh, no, that's wrong, but that's the media. That's what they do.
Well, it's interesting because on one hand, you've got McGregor, who in theory will probably be looking to change a lot of things, maybe pace himself more, which may make the fight go a little bit longer. But then you're right, you got Nate Diaz, who's on a full training camp. He beat him on 8 days' notice, and he did it in less than 2 rounds. Do you think this is going to be a longer fight or a shorter fight? How do you see it playing out?
Well, the way I see it is that Nathan's going to get the win. Okay, I mean, I'm not, I feel that Nathan's going to be better. I feel that McGregor's going to be in trouble because from 8 days to a full training camp is totally different from Nathan. He's going to come out a lot sharper, faster, quicker, and he's going to have more energy.
Yeah. Well,
so McGregor's not going to have. He's going to have the same thing he had the last time. He trained hard for the last fight before Dos Santos got hurt. So he was already training. No matter if it was a tall guy, short guy, he was still training to fight. Nathan wasn't. So that tells you a lot. That tells me a lot anyway. He's fighting a guy that's a lot better than him, a lot stronger than him. So that's what I don't understand why people are favoring McGregor.
It's certainly going to be a very interesting contest. We can't wait to see the fight. Now, Richard, we really appreciate the time. And before we let you go, we just want to ask you about something else. Obviously, you haven't trained Nate Diaz for quite some time, but he is making his return to the UFC. And it looks like the new welterweight champion, Tyron Woodley, is calling him out and wants to fight him next. I just want to quickly get your opinion on how this fight would go if it came together. Do you believe that if Nate Diaz does choose to fight Tyron Woodley, he can become the new welterweight champion?
Well, he can't do it in 2 weeks. I know that's not going to happen.
No, of course not. Well, it wouldn't be at UFC 202. I think that would be ridiculous. But if it happens in the future, full training camp, how would you see that playing out? Can Nick win the big one?
Of course he can. I mean, these Nick and Nate, they're tough boys, and don't get me wrong, Woodley is not either. I mean, Woodley's tough too, but I've seen Nick fight better fighters than him. Better strikers. So it depends on Nick and how he trains.
He said something interesting in an interview with Brett Okamoto about how he believes somebody freaking drugged him. Do you know what he was talking about in there, or was he just sort of going off the cuff? Have you heard anything about that? Have you heard him speak about that before? That's in relation to his fight with GSP in Canada.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I was there. And It was George St-Pierre's nurse or something came down, and he wanted to give Nick some kind of stuff, and I told Nick not to do it, but he gave it to him, and afterwards. So that's what he's talking about.
What was
I don't know
it?
what it was. I'm not saying that it was a drug or anything, but I just know that he's different.
Okay, so you say it was GSP's nurse. What was it that made you believe it was GSP's nurse? Did they say anything that they were from GSP's staff?
Yeah, well, he said that he worked with George St-Pierre.
Okay, and what was it? Was it something like, was it a drink? Was it an injection, a pill? What was it?
It was through an IV.
Through an IV. Wow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And how long before the fight was this? Or was this is obviously before the fight?
Day.
How long before? Next day?
Next day, yeah.
When you saw a direct sort of influence from this that you believe sort of affected him in the fight the next day?
Of course, because he was up all night urinating. I mean, he wasn't feeling it. He was going to the bathroom a lot. I mean, I don't know what it did, but I know he was going to the bathroom a lot. So it probably dehydrated him and drained him. I don't know, but I just know I was sitting there and the guy wanted to give him something. I don't know what it's for. I told him no, but he said it wasn't going to hurt him. So.
Wow, that's interesting.
He was.
And you wouldn't remember.
It was strange.
It sounds strange. You wouldn't remember that person's name by any chance, would you?
What's that?
You wouldn't remember the person's name, would you?
Well, I wouldn't tell you anyway. I mean, you know,
Right.
You're getting too personal there. You know, I mean, it happened, and I mean, it's over and done, and I mean, sure, Nick's gonna say it, but I mean, it's the past now.
All right.
You know.
Well, we'll forget about the past. We'll move on to the future. Before we let you go, we got to ask you your prediction for August 20th. Last time we spoke to you, you didn't really have one, and maybe because the fight was so far away. But now that you've seen Nate in training, the fight's so close. Just wondering if you have a prediction, Richard. How do you see Nate winning on August 20th at UFC 202 when he rematches Conor McGregor?
Nate's going to get the victory.
Well, there you go. He's a man of few words, but you can trust them. Richard Perez Boxing. Make sure to check it out on Facebook and at Richard Perez 209 on Twitter, richardperezboxing.com. Go on the website. Make sure to go down to the facility. This is a great time to do it. Richard Perez, a genius when it comes to boxing, and a great pleasure to have on the show. Richard, we look forward to seeing you at UFC 202, and best of luck for the rest of the camp.
Thank you.
All right, guys, there you go, Richard Perez. It's going to be a big fight at UFC 202. Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. Can't wait for this one, Cass. And we'll be there ourselves. We'll be there in person, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, I guess, give you guys the big announcement of what's going to be happening over the next few weeks. But before that event even happens, Salt Lake City has just had a very interesting event in a UFC Fight Night. It was headlined by not the biggest names in the business, but a sort of plan to grow a fighter's name in particular if he was successful. And it was quite a showing in the main event. But before we jump to it, I'm of course talking about the UFC Fight Night Rodríguez Caceres card. It was packed with some strong fighters, some interesting matchups, and the card was sprinkled throughout with some veterans. I'm saying this, of course, because on the early prelim cards, the UFC Fight Pass ones, you had a matchup between Swanson and Kawajiri. Now, usually it's a fight that, and I mean, on a card like this, you'd almost expect it to be a co-main event or even a main event, but the UFC have lately been using these opportunities to grow their numbers, their Fight Pass numbers, so it was an early morning for those in Australia who wanted to see Swanson do his thing. Cass, let's kick it off at this fight. What did you think of this contest?
Look, I thought it was a really fun fight. It was kind of the fight that both guys needed. Kawajiri was looking for a step up in competition against Cub Swanson. Cub Swanson was sort of, looking to make it 2 in a row. The fight itself, it was fun. I really didn't see Kawajiri taking down Cub Swanson as much as he did. I was a little bit surprised. I thought that considering Kawajiri, he's getting a little bit older these days. He's not the guy that he used to be. I thought the Cub Swanson was going to be able to stay at range and just slowly pick him apart. Maybe even finish him somewhere later down the line of the fight. I was impressed with Kawajiri, and to be honest with you, I don't think the Cub Swanson should have technically won that fight, at least not on the scorecards. I think that Kawajiri clearly won the first round. There was some illegal knees that seemed to be the theme of the night. I believe Trevor Smith had multiple illegal knees in his fight. Cub Swanson had a really bad one that had Kawajiri sidelined for a second. Big John McCarthy, for some reason, didn't see a reason to take a point away. I thought he should have, and if that were to happen and Kawajiri obviously wins the first round, then the fight should have been a draw, and I do think that was the correct decision. What about you, Dennis? What did you think?
Yeah, I was surprised by Big John. Isn't that strange that he didn't take a point? You'd think out of everyone, he'd be the guy that takes a point in that situation. And I know Anik and Stan were like, oh, that knee was like close to the body. But it's like, come on, guys. Close to the body is still not the body. And it looked like it hit him in that head region. And, I don't know why he didn't take a point. And you bring up a really good point, because if he had taken that point, then Kawajiri would have won the fight on the scorecards. But I was really impressed with Kawajiri. Some really good counter striking, some nice hooks. Obviously, like you mentioned, he was able to take Swanson down. So even though Swanson wins this one, Kawajiri impressed me. And I don't know. It was one of those tough things where you do wonder why Big John didn't take that point. And it wasn't really something that people really went crazy over on the internet. People sort of passed it over, maybe because it was like an early fight and people not as many people were watching, but it was a point that got passed over rather quickly that sort of stood out in my mind as well. So I'm happy you brought that up.
Yeah, I think even though he didn't technically win that fight, this fight does something to Kawajiri, especially doing pretty well, I think, against a guy like Cub Swanson, who not too long ago people were talking about maybe contending for a title. He's unfortunately now on 2 losses in a row. Next fight, if he loses, there is a strong possibility he will be cut from the UFC if it isn't a phenomenally exciting fight. But I do think this one definitely does something for Kawajiri as far as his stock. That is, of course, if people even watched it. I mean, this wasn't the most looked forward to card from the beginning, and Fight Pass is sometimes a difficult ask, especially if you're here 9 o'clock or 9:30 in the morning in Australia on a Sunday afternoon, a time where most people are waking up hungover.
Yeah, that's right. And his last loss was to Dennis Bermudez, which is a couple of tough matchups for him, back-to-back, Bermudez and Swanson. So I'll be interested to see what the UFC does with him next. But speaking of what's next, any idea whatsoever what you'd want to do with Swanson? Maybe anyone from this card that you'd like to put him up against?
Yeah, I do. Oh, well, all right, since we're talking about... You know what? Let's save it, because I do have some plans, but I will unravel them in 2 fights' time. So you pretty much know what I'm going to say, but yeah. I'll be like the masked magician. I got to whip off the cloth and announce the secret.
All right, I like it. Well, let's jump into the main card, because there were a lot of interesting fights, but we're going to jump right up to the main card, right up to Talis Latis versus Chris Camozzi. Now, Camozzi has had a bit of an issue previously fighting Jacare, another really, really skilled grappler, and he was going up against Talis Latis. Some people actually picking Camozzi in this fight. Before we actually jump to what you thought of the matchup, what did you think, Has? Did you think Camozzi was going to win this one? Or were you picking Latis?
I saw 2 possibilities. One, a lot more likely. I thought if Camozzi's going to win, he's going to be able to stuff Latis' takedowns. He's going to stand on the outside. He's got a very good jab, and he's good in the clinch as far as striking goes. He's good with his elbows. He's good with his knees. And I thought, Latis isn't the most active guy on his feet. He has very good knockout power, but he doesn't really throw a whole lot of volume. So I thought Camozzi may be able to eke out a decision, but I thought more than likely if Talis Latis' wrestling does hold up, I thought he was going to be able to take him down. And I actually thought he might be submitting Camozzi in the second round. I mean, I know that Latis' caliber of BJJ isn't necessarily Jacare, but it's still phenomenal. And, considering that Camozzi has struggled with that in the past, I thought second round submission for Talis Latis. So I wasn't that far off. What about you, man?
Yeah, I'm big on Latis, and he looked really good against Michael Bisping. That Massasi fight didn't quite go his way, but I really thought he was going to beat Camozzi. And this kind of reminds me, we're obviously on Twitter. You guys should follow us at SubmissionAUS. We love to put out a few GIFs during the fights and have a bit of a laugh with all the listeners and everybody in the community. But Connor Rebush actually put up a very, very funny poll before the fight even happened, and I'll read it out to you guys. It said, to what/whom would you compare Chris Camozzi's masculine grace? A Painterly Sunset, a majestic Rowan Stallion, or Brad Pitt? Now, Casper, I was controlling the Submission Radio Twitter page when I saw this, so I took your. I thought what you'd like the most.
What did you think I wanted?
Well, I went with a Stallion. The Brad Pitt was. I
think that's reaching.
It was tempting.
Yeah,
but I hope you don't hold it against me. But it was definitely the poll of the day from my perspective on the Twitterverse when this card was going down.
I'll get over it. What was the sunset one? A weatherly sunset?
Let me get
Painterly sunset?
Yeah, Painterly Sunset. So
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, I mean, and he has a point. The physique has improved a little bit, as Brian Stan pointed out before the fight even started. But yeah, to me, this fight, I was very impressed with Caceres, with the fact that he was tough enough to stop Ladies from choking him out in those first couple of rounds. But you can't not be impressed with the skill set that Ladies has when it comes to grappling. I mean, everybody knows he's a strong grappler, but time and time again, he reminds us just how good he really is. One of the things that sort of annoys me sometimes about the fights is when there's blatant cage grabs. And Caceres sort of had a blatant cage grab at the start. It kind of annoys me when the referees don't address that and make a big deal out of it, because if you're the fighter in his corner, that's super frustrating. But yeah, I'll say that. Yeah, I was very impressed with Laites and was impressed with Caceres' toughness. But you got to give it up for Laites at the end of the day. Anything surprise you about this fight, Cass?
No, not really. It played out pretty similarly to what I thought. But it's interesting how you bring up the cage grabs, because I agree, and I was very frustrated when I saw at the start Caceres was grabbing the fence. And in theory, the story of the first round was Laites on Caceres' back trying to get the fight to the ground. But if it wasn't for that cage grab, I think Caceres would have been on the ground in the first, I don't know exactly how long, but let's say 30 seconds to a minute. He should have been on the ground, and it's something that Laites was able to do repeatedly in the rest of the fight. So I'm with you on the frustrated bandwagon. And as I'm watching the fight, I don't think it really showed anything new about Laites. He really just continued to demonstrate the skill set that we already knew that he had. And I thought, you know what? He is dominating a guy like Caceres, who's pretty much doing the best he's ever. He's on the best run of his career ever, and he's just completely nullifying him and shutting him down. The crowd was booing, which I thought was unfortunate, and the UFC really does take note of that kind of stuff. You can be extremely dominant, but if it is primarily grappling and wrestling, unfortunately, the UFC doesn't always look fondly on it. So and I was watching this fight thinking, man, if he doesn't finish the fight, it's going to take a really good performance and kind of turn it against him. He did get the finish in the third round, which I was really happy about. It's still a fight that I don't think is really going to catapult him. I think more than anything, it was the win that he needed. He needed to get back on the horse. It was a bit of a confidence builder. And Caceres, he's not a joke. So I think it's a pretty solid win for Laites. And he still believes he can, get up there, get back into title contention, which is good considering he's been around for a very long time. And I know you like Laites, Dennis. I feel like it must burn you to a certain degree, because you thought he beat Michael Bisping, and now Michael Bisping is champion.
I know, and it opens up that door of, if Laites wins a bunch of fights, would a fight make sense there? But of course we know the drawing power isn't quite there for Laites, so who knows if he'll ever get that shot. But speaking of what's going to happen to him next, I mean, I'm looking in the rankings right now, trying to figure out what the future holds for our dear friend Laites, who, by the way, we should get back on the show at some point and talk about what's been going on. Any ideas who you'd like to see him fight next?
I really haven't given it a thought. Well, let's see, You got Derek Brunson at number 10, and Derek Brunson missed out on a fight. He was meant to fight Gegard Mousasi. I feel like they probably want Derek Brunson to get a bit of a step up in competition. You could do Robert Whittaker. He hasn't really been tested all that much on the ground. We know he's a good striker. That could be a fun fight. Anything above that, you're sort of reaching a bit in the rankings, and you're really dealing with money-drawing guys like Anderson, Vitor Belfort, Jacare. I don't know. Any ideas, Dennis?
Yeah, pretty much what you said. I mean, maybe Uriah Hall might want to fight him. Probably not. I don't know. We'll see. And that's an interesting one with Robert Whittaker, because you're right. Like, that matchup might make sense, but at the same time, it's like, it's a tough fight. Do you derate
Robert Whittaker?
Yeah, you do fear a little bit, because people love Laites, but it's like they don't really give him that kind of credit that he deserves. And then if he beats Robert Whittaker, it's like, okay, there goes Robert Whittaker. They won't be like, Laites is a tough mofo that's had a bunch of really good fights. So it's an interesting one, and hopefully for the Australian fans, and nothing against Laites, hopefully for the Australian fans, that's not the fight the UFC picks, because that would probably be the main event of the next card that's sort of circling that November time.
I wonder whether they're going to use Robert Whittaker and put him in a main event, give him a step up, or I wonder if they want to build his profile and they'll give him more international cards to fight on and sort of expand his reach. Because the thing is, if you're the UFC, you're probably really holding on to Robert Whittaker with both hands, right? As far as Aussies with drawing power, Jake Matthews unfortunately lost in Vegas a few weeks ago. It feels like a long time ago. It feels almost like a month ago. And then you got Mark Hunt, who was our adopted Aussie, and we don't even know if he's going to ever fight in the UFC again. Hopefully cooler heads prevail, but if he doesn't, who do you have for all these Aussie shows? Mark Hunt was kind of a sure thing. Jake Matthews was like a main card guy, and if you don't have them, you need a Robert Whittaker to sort of stay on that bandwagon and hope for the best.
Yeah, no doubt. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I agree with you, because it's kind of hard to pinpoint what the UFC are going to do with a lot of fighters. I'll be honest, the main event from the Salt Lake City card sort of surprised me a little bit. You know, I thought not the biggest drawing power, even though it makes sense to push Yair Rodríguez, because obviously he's got a big fan base. Even that sort of surprised me a little bit. So I'm not sure what they'll do. I guess they do have those two options: put him in a main event in November, or put him on more international cards. And I guess the good thing is, if you put him on an international card and he loses, and he's not too high up on the pecking order, sometimes people overlook it and forget about it a little bit. Whereas when you're the main event, it's hard to forget that.
Or if you put him up against someone and give him a really big step up in competition, let's say you give him Vitor Belfort and he loses, it's like, all right, he lost, but he lost to Vitor Belfort. Like, a lot of guys would lose to Vitor Belfort. He might get the rub. And if he's on sort of the main card, it's a fight that people are looking forward to, and obviously depending on how he performs, but I don't know. These are all hypotheticals. You mentioned that, you know, not the biggest drawing power with Yair Rodríguez and Caceres. Couldn't agree with you more. I mean, this card in a lot of ways was the media's nightmare. We heard some of the other media outlets talking about, you know, they're going to have to go there, they're going to have to fly down there, spend their money, etc. They're probably not going to get a big return on investment, because this isn't the kind of card that really gets clicks. There's probably a lot of people who probably, you know, slept on this one. The other interesting thing is you've got Yair Rodríguez, who you're trying to push as the new Latino sensation, the new poster boy for UFC's expansion in Latin America, and you're going to Utah, which, you know, I don't know that much about the US, but from what I know about Utah is snow, Mormons, and altitude, right? But I did see someone saying that apparently near Utah, some of the surrounding states have some of the highest population of Latinos or Latino Americans. So I think that's another reason why the UFC kind of went there, hoping that all the Latinos would, you know, drive down or fly down to Utah.
Well, I'll tell you what, when Yair came out, there was quite a few fans there supporting him, so it might have worked. But look, before we get to that fight, interested to see what happens to the ladies. We'll have to stay on top of it, and who knows, maybe we'll be talking to him in November when he's fighting Robert Whittaker here in Australia or New Zealand. But let's move on to the next fight, Cass. Dennis Bermudez returns and versed Ronnie Jason in a fight that was pretty interesting. I mean, Bermudez, a lot of people on the internet, on Twitter, online, were talking about almost had a flawless game plan in this fight. Even though he got caught a couple of times in a couple of tricky situations, he was pretty dominant throughout this one. What was your take on his performance?
Oh, he looked great, and the fight pretty much played out exactly how I expected. He's got a lot of tools, you know, he's got a good pace, he's good striking, the wrestling, there's zero comparison, and Ronnie Jason, he really wanted the fight on the ground. He was talking about how he expected, he said that if he was taken to the ground, he expects to have a massive advantage. And why wouldn't you? Because Dennis Bermudez, he has been submitted multiple times in his career. He's got those losses, I think at least 3, probably 4 losses via submission. I thought that Dennis's defense would be good enough to sort of stave off the submission attempts, and he really did beat him up from the top. I mean, nothing puts an exclamation point on a performance when you put a crater in your opponent's forehead. There was that shaky moment, if you're a Bermudez fan, where Ronnie Jason used that switch and ended up in top, and you're like, oh shit, what's going to happen? But Dennis Bermudez ended up on top afterwards. So I think the performance was really good. You got to remember also, Ronnie Jason is a guy that was on the sidelines for a year. So while he is a dangerous opponent, and we saw Bermudez doing very well and then, you know, getting knocked out by Jeremy Stephens in one of his more recent outings, and anything can happen, I think this was much like the Kamosi fight for Talis Ladies. This was a confidence builder. It's one to sort of, you know, get him back in the bandwagon. I have some plans for Bermudez, and I love the call out, but before we go into that, what did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Great performance from Bermudez. You know, big ups to the corner guy who was able to stop Jason's head from bleeding in between rounds. I was like, wow, that's pretty good. I got to get this guy over to my house, plug up my ceiling because it keeps leaking during winter. But yeah, just very impressed with Bermudez. He didn't risk as much in this fight. He had a better game plan. And you could really see it. It's almost like he matured a little bit as a fighter. And it's his second win in a row, which is good. The first one was over Kawajiri, who we spoke about a little bit earlier. But I'm really interested about your plans, because he did he did try and call out Frankie Edgar. And by the way, Max Holloway told him to get in line on Twitter. Mm-hmm. But what kind of plans would you have for Dennis Bermudez?
Well, I mean, they're not different than most other people. Look, I love the call out. I love that it was so short and concise and straight to the point. I think that anything else he would have said, if he spoke about his performance or anything like that, would have had the potential to water down his message. You can't misconstrue this message. He wants Frankie Edgar. He wants him in New York. That's it. There's no way that anybody can twist his words, and I love it. The only problem is Bermudez is ranked number 8, Frankie Edgar is ranked number 2, and he just fought for the interim belt. I love that he's ambitious. I just don't think he's going to get that fight. I think Max Holloway is probably going to get that fight. Max is number 3, Frankie's number 2. I think that fight makes a lot more sense. And I think Cub Swanson makes a lot more sense for Dennis Bermudez, who's ranked number 5. So I think you do Cub Swanson and Dennis Bermudez. Bermudez, by the way, he's a guy that's fought a lot of the top guys already in featherweight. So he's almost at that point where he's running out of names. And the fact that Cub Swanson's a guy who he's never crossed paths with is almost lucky. The other issue that I would see with Frankie Edgar and Bermudez is they're both New York guys. So when you're in there, who do you sort of go for? You want both guys to win. I think people would probably go for Frankie Edgar because for a long time he's been more of a poster boy for New York. And if you do Cub Swanson, look, there's every chance that Bermudez might be fighting on that card anyway. It might be Cub Swanson versus Bermudez, and at least that way, you know, Cub Swanson, he's Mr. SoCal. You've got East Coast versus West Coast, and then Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar. I don't know what coast Hawaii's on, but I'm pretty sure it's... I don't know. I would guess it's not New York, so at least you've got sort of two rivalries there. I think that makes a lot more sense. What do you think? Do you agree, or am I
Yeah, man.
stupid?
Look, you've sold me. I mean, this is much bigger than the main event that we're about to speak about. I think it makes a lot of sense. And why I agree with you. Why put two New York guys down when you can spread them out on the card and then give the fans a chance to cheer for the homegrown guy in two fights? So makes perfect sense to me. And I think, Joe Silva, get into Casper's idea and let's get this thing going. And the fights would be great as well. I'd love to see those matchups. So very good stuff, Casper. Very good. Very impressive matchmaking there.
Yeah, I'll be taking my cut from Joe Silva when those two fights inevitably get made.
If John Jones ever gets caught in one of these situations again, instead of calling Joe Silva, Dana White needs to give you a call.
Yeah, I'm like Newman in Seinfeld. I'm the problem solver. I make problems go away.
You'll need a glass of milk, but you'll get it done.
Yeah, a glass of milk, some muffin tops. If I'm curt, I apologize. I understand time is of the essence. Let's talk about the main event before we talk about, I guess in a lot of ways, the real main event, which is the UFC's welterweight division. Yair Rodríguez, Alex Caceres. I'm just going to get straight into it. I had this one 49-46. I think Caceres only won round 3. What did you think of the fight, Dennis?
Yeah, it was. Look, I agree with you with the round that he won. I think it was a really good fight. It really delivered. There was a big chance that not only was this going to be a fight where it didn't have the biggest name value, but it might have been a stinker as well. And it turned out to be a very exciting fight. Rodríguez was doing crazy Matrix-type spinning shit that people were going crazy over. It was a bit of a spectacle. People seemed to really enjoy it. The media loved it. Everybody online loved it. Rodríguez got a whole bunch of new fans. And, you know, Caceres had his moments, but Rodríguez was really the star of the moment. So, yeah, I thought it was a great fight. I thought it did what it was supposed to do for the UFC, and fans didn't turn on it, which is really good for the UFC as well. And I mean, look, a lot of casual fans, maybe not everyone, he's not in the Conor McGregor level yet, but a lot of casual fans watched Rodríguez do his thing. They had no idea who he was. Now they do. So they're getting him somewhere. I mean, this guy has a bright future, 23 years old.
Yeah, I think the UFC breathed a massive sigh of relief when they saw that, you know, this was their big plans for to continue their expansion into Latin America. And I think they breathed a massive sigh of relief when they saw, you know, despite one judge having it horribly wrong, 49-46 Caceres. What is going on here, really?
You just hope that they failed maths or something like that. Like it was an error adding it up and he didn't actually feel that was his score, because that's just ridiculous.
Whenever I see that, I always think, like, they must have thought Rodríguez was the guy with the afro, surely. You know what? One thing that I was impressed with, obviously Yair does have a lot of holes in his game. One thing that he needs to work on is his accuracy, because he throws a lot of those spinning attacks, and he did well beating up Caceres' legs and his body, and to the point where Caceres didn't really have enough at the end where I guess you could say Yair Rodríguez slowed down enough, but he does miss a lot, and I think he expends energy unnecessarily. But in saying that, I was actually pretty impressed with his cardio because, yeah, he did slow down, and normally you'd look at a performance like that and you wouldn't really say, okay, well, I was impressed with the guy's cardio. But when you consider that everything that he did was attacks and movements that exerted as much energy as possible, and the fact that they were fighting at altitude, the fact that he only slowed down and didn't really gas, I was actually pretty impressed with that. And I've seen a lot of guys do far worse in their first time in a 5-round fight.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess the big question now is, who do you give him next? Because you don't want to give him someone of that pecking order because he's got a lot of holes that can be taken advantage of, especially by strong wrestlers and grapplers who might break down the distance against him. But then you want to give him someone where people still feel like he's sort of progressing up the ladder. I don't know. I'm looking at the rankings. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to look at it from the UFC's perspective. What's the sort of least risky move that still gets us some kind of benefit? I don't know. I'm looking at Choi, but Choi, he's a power striker, man, and he can turn someone's lights out pretty quickly.
I definitely wouldn't want to see. Yeah, I thought about that as well, but he's their poster boy for Korea. That's too. Yeah, he is the Korean version of Yair, like in every sense. You do not want to. You do not want to. Dethrone or derail two hype trains. You got Darren Elkins. He's a good wrestler. Hakron Diaz is already booked against Brian Ortega, and I think Brian Ortega, he's another prospect that would be a bit tough.
He's a tough one, Ortega, yeah. You don't want to mix Ortega in that tank just yet.
Then you got Bermudez. I mean, he's coming off a win, but that's tough. He's a great wrestler. See, I'm kind of leaning towards, you got 6 and 7, Oliveira and Stevens. Past that, and you're really getting to the top of the division. I could see one against Jeremy Stevens, because I think that's a really stiff test. But I could see Yair Rodríguez potentially, doing it. Like Jeremy Stevens, if he gets on the inside of you, he can knock your face off. He can end your life. But the thing is getting there. So if Yair Rodríguez can keep the distance and over a 3-round fight, and if he does beat a guy like Jeremy Stevens, that's a huge win. And then you got Oliveira. He's facing Pettis, I believe, in I think just a couple of weeks or so. I think just after UFC 202. It depends how he goes. But Oliveira, he's phenomenal on the ground. But if you can't get him on the ground, if Yair Rodríguez can keep the distance, I think he could beat him in the stand-up. Are there any other guys that you see? What do you think of those? And is there anyone else that you see potentially working?
Yeah, I think, look, those are some good options. There's Kawajiri, but Kawajiri is really good. I don't know. And he's ranked underneath Rodríguez, so I probably wouldn't even mess with that. So yeah, one of those would be great. Look, Stevens, yeah, he's a scary dude, but a win over him does a lot. So, and it would be a super exciting fight. I think people would be so excited to watch that fight. Like, what's going to happen? So you could sell the shit out of that fight. It'll be interesting. Everyone's so damn tough in that division.
I think it is. They are, and it's an easy sell. I think Stevens and Rodríguez. You got Stevens is not like brutal knockout power, and Rodríguez is spinning shit. I think that's easy to mark.
And people would forgive, Rodríguez if he lost. It wouldn't really destroy his career too much because it's Stevens, and he does that to a lot of people. Most recently he did it to Bermudez. Bermudez has bounced back. So, let's do it. Let's put it together. Another good fight put together. So there you guys go. Salt Lake City, weird sort of card. The crowd had to go through a few fights that weren't that interesting and saw some good fights, but I think it sort of drained them. So you got some weird boos at certain times of the night.
People just waking up randomly, boo, not knowing what's going on.
Yeah, like me at that Kay and Peele show. So long story short, it was a very strange experiment, but I think it paid off for the UFC, and there were a couple of fun fights. So if you guys missed it, jump on your Fight Pass and check out a few of the fights. Check out Bermudez's fight. Check out the Swanson fight. Check out the main event because that was pretty cool. Check it all out.
Just check it out, man. That's what. Just listen to Diego Sanchez and Joe Lozon about the Fight Pass and just do it. You don't got it, man. Anyway, let's talk about the main event of the episode, so to speak. The most interesting thing, or one of the most interesting things currently in the UFC, as far as just straight fighting goes, is probably the UFC's welterweight division. A lot's happened in the time that we've been away. Tyron Woodley has become the new champion. He has ended Robbie Lawler's reign. There's a lot to discuss. Before we even talk about who is next for Tyron, because that's one of the biggest questions. We discussed it previously with Pat Miletic. I just want to address something, and that is that, there has been a massive movement and a massive shift in the last year, maybe 2 years, probably not too much longer than that, where fighters are opting for big money fights and they are focusing more about the money as opposed to the titles. And I feel like for a long time, for years and years and years, since the sport's inception, the reason why people did this sport, because it sure as hell didn't pay very well back then, especially not on the early UFCs, and you could argue whether it pays well to this day if you're not a top guy. The reason why people did it was for the glory of becoming a champion. And now fighters are specifically, and to prove that they are the best, now fighters are specifically choosing, you know what, I'll take the money. I'll even go fight in a lesser organization, like, say, a Bellator. Fighters like, fighters like Benson Henderson, who had the offer of, hey, if you win the championship again, you'll be paid oodles and oodles of money. And he was realistic about it and said, you know what? That is no longer the priority. My priority is about getting paid. Rory McDonald, same thing. He can stay in the UFC and become potentially the UFC champion and say, I am the best of the best. But he's considering taking his services elsewhere, whether it's Bellator, World Series of Fighting. It seems like it doesn't really matter what the stage is as long as he's getting paid more. Matt Mitrione, King Mo for ages. This has been Nick Diaz's thing for a long time, the money fights. Isn't this crazy? What do you think about this whole thing, Dennis?
Yeah, it's definitely a shift. And I wonder why, because there's a couple of theories that I have on it. Number one, the UFC roster is just so big these days that just being a UFC fighter doesn't feel like a special thing anymore, I feel like. Because you have so many UFC fighters that people don't even know of. And I mean, even hardcore MMA fans might see names that are in the UFC that they've never heard of before, may not recognize. So maybe these fighters are like, look, being in the UFC isn't what it used to be. And maybe there's a whole sponsorship thing as well, where they used to be able to wear their own sponsorship stuff and make a few bucks on the side. Maybe that rubs them the wrong way as well. Yeah, but apart from that, maybe it's also the Conor McGregor effect, and maybe even a little bit the Chael Sonnen effect. Well, more Conor McGregor, I guess, where they see, all right, this guy. Because I feel like a lot of these UFC fighters are like, whoa, Conor McGregor is making a shitload of money, more money than I might make in my whole fight in one of his fights. So maybe this whole plan that I have is wrong, and maybe I need to be more like Conor McGregor and look for these big money fights. I don't know what it is. Something in the Kool-Aid over there in Vegas.
I feel like the other thing is that for a long time, people thought that becoming a champion is the only way to make money. They thought, if you become the champion, obviously, you have leverage in the promotion, you're important, they're going to roll out the red carpet for you because you are their champion. I think people are realizing you don't even have to be a champion to make all that kind of money. If you can, sell yourself well, if you have a big personality, you can still be main evented cards. Look at Nate Diaz. He's getting paid through the ass, and he's not a champion. Conor McGregor, he had so much promotional pull and push before he was ever a champion.
And current champions also not getting paid that much. I mean, you got Demetrius Johnson, who a lot of people think is pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world, one of the best guys to watch. And you compare his salary to that of a Conor McGregor, for example, and you start going, all right, even if I am champion and I'm a dominant champion, there's a good chance I still won't be getting that huge, fuck off, I can retire after a couple of fights money, and it's still not the same thing.
Well, for a long time, there was that general consensus where people said, if you're not looking to be the best, if you're not looking to be the champion, if you don't believe you can be the champion, you shouldn't compete. Why are you even in the sport? And I think that mentality has sort of shifted where people like being a little bit more realistic, because when you've got a roster of 500 or 600 fighters, even if the belt changes every single time it's defended, realistically, not everyone's going to be champion. And that's obviously a ridiculous, extreme hypothetical, which, you're going to get guys who are reigning for multiple years. The chances of you being a UFC champion, even if you're in the UFC, even if you're in the top, is extremely small. I mean, Frankie Edgar, as good as he is, he may never be the UFC champion. That's a possibility. He may be, but he also might not. So I think a lot of fighters are like, you know what, I'm going to be a little bit more realistic about it, and instead of chasing an unreachable dream like being the champion, I'm going to be smart about this, and I'm going to try and make as much money as possible. Damien Brown, who we spoke to just before, he seems like he's sort of, pretty level-headed, and he's not exactly chasing pipe dreams and saying, look, I'm going to be the champion. He wants to set himself up for the future. And I think another reason is because this sport's pretty young, and we're only now seeing, the pioneers and guys who back in the day were the champions and, were the big names, guys like, say, Mark Coleman, like a Ken Shamrock, like a Bas Rutten. Those guys are, a few decades, a decade or two removed from their primes, and now you see them as they're a little bit older, and you can see a guy like, say, Mark Coleman, and he's not doing very well, right? His health isn't in a great place. He's not doing great financially. He needed a GoFundMe account to take care of some of his health issues, and people are realizing, like, wow, this is the Pride Grand Prix champion. This is the guy who was a UFC champion back in the day, and I think they're realizing it's a sobering realization that, you know what, you can be a champion, and you may still need to get a regular job, or you may be, doing bad financially. And I think that's why a lot of these fighters, like, say, Tyron Woodley, and this is why I'm bringing this up, are going, you know what, I want to make big money against GSP. I want to make big money against Nate Diaz. I don't care about necessarily proving anything to anyone. I know I'm the best. I don't have to verse, the necessarily number one contender or the guys that people say are the best in the division. It's about making money. Same reason why Luke Rockhold picked Bisping over a guy like Jacare, even though he beat Jacare, because he knew that Bisping was the money fight. Yeah, it's a crazy shift.
And also because they see these guys like Coleman and a lot of these old school guys really struggle with their health, and they realize, well, we don't actually have that many fights in our career like we thought, because obviously we've spoken about this before, but there's a real trend in guys retiring younger and younger now because of all their health risks. So I think a lot of fighters are also going into this thing going, I don't have as many fights to even get to a title and defend my title enough to make that money to retire.
And the other thing is, it takes so long, realistically, to become a UFC champion. You probably unless you're an anomaly, it's probably going to take about 10 years of your life, 10 years of your career. It's very rare that someone like, say, John Jones comes along and, can get it done in a few. But if we're talking about when you first make your pro MMA debut, I mean, even look at Conor McGregor. I think it took him, 7 years from his first amateur fight in 2007 till the time that he, last year won the title. It's a long time. So once you get there, a lot of people are saying, well, you need to prove this and you need to prove that. I understand why fighters are like, I don't have to prove anything to anyone. I have proven things for years and years and years. It's time to make some money, because these careers are so short these days that, yeah, I understand why fighters are opting for it. But let's talk about Tyron's options. He's obviously going for these money fights. GSP is one of the names brought up. Nate Diaz is one of the names brought up. There's a long line. You got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who is the official number one contender. I think very few people can argue that he deserves it. You've even got Maya and Condit somewhere in the back. What do you think about who should potentially be next and this whole conundrum?
Yeah, I'm not big on Nate Diaz getting the title shot, just from the perspective of I don't really think he's the type of fighter that should be champion, because he's very in and out, up and down. You can't really rely on him to be a champion. So let's say he does beat Woodley. It's a little bit tough because he's got a lot more bargaining chips on his side. He's already sort of difficult to deal with, and he's not the most reliable guy. He can be sort of tough to lock down and figure things out with. So he's more of a guy that you want to make super fights with, one-off fights, because who knows how many more fights he's really going to have or how he's going to feel after fights. So when it comes to this title fight, I guess from a fan's perspective, look, I'd love to see Tyron Woodley versus Nate Diaz. I'd love to see Nate Diaz versus GSP rematch. I'd like to see Nate Diaz fight a bunch of dudes. From the UFC's perspective, I can see why they wouldn't do it, because it's a bit of a risk. There's a few things associated with it. Who knows? What if Nick smokes weed again? There's just no guarantees about a bunch of things. So I would give Wonderboy Thompson his shot, because I really think he deserves it. But if GSP is in the lines, if GSP is saying, hey, guys, I want to make a comeback, I want to return, and this is a guy that never really technically lost his title, I mean, I think the case is there for him to get it over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. As hard as it is for me to say, because it really shows that the ranking system doesn't really mean jack shit, and it really depends what kind of name you have. I guess a part of me sort of feels like GSP would get that, or I'd want to see GSP get that shot. What about you, Cass? What's your mindset on it?
Yeah, no, look, anyone who's still under the impression this is a pure sport is sadly mistaken and is either a new fan or hasn't been paying attention for a number of years. I mean, look, it is a business. In a lot of ways, I can understand why the UFC does that. It wasn't too long ago. What was it, 2014, I think? That was a really horrible year for the UFC in terms of pay-per-views and ratings and, allegedly the money earned. People saying, oh, the UFC's done, they're out of business. But then the same people say, oh, why are the rankings being ignored? Why are you making, bullshit super fights instead of following the rankings? I mean, look, as a business, they have to do what's right for them. I'm not necessarily saying it's right or wrong. I'm not discussing whether it's fair. And I like Wonderboy. I really do. He is the nicest guy. But I feel like he kind of faces the same issue as a Frankie Edgar. He is incredibly talented and an amazing fighter. He is so nice, and I think to his detriment. And he, unfortunately, is just not enough as a draw. And that's why I said, with Rory McDonald, that was a massive win over Rory, right? Rory McDonald's incredibly tough, and he just, he took him to a decision. But I feel like, in a lot of ways, that fight kind of hurt him, because even though it was a good fight, I think a lot of the casual fans didn't really enjoy it and or appreciate it. Whereas when he beat Johnny Hendricks, it was a one-round destruction. I feel like everybody was like, wow, this guy needs to get the title shot next. It is what it is. They gave Tyron the shot. And, after being away for so long, what was it, like a year and a bit? I can understand why Tyron just wants to make up, time and get paid. I agree with you. I think it's GSP. If I'm Tyron Woodley and I want to make as much money as possible, 100% GSP. He's the more proven draw. And of course, we're talking between Nick Diaz and GSP. GSP is the proven draw. Of the top 18 UFC pay-per-views, the highest buy rates, GSP was in 5 of them. And Nick was only in 1. And that was the time he versed GSP. UFC 183, Diaz versus Anderson Silva, is not even in the top 18 UFC pay-per-views, and that was meant to be a massive event. I think if you want to make money, and the other thing is Nick Diaz, I think he's got a lot of steam behind him because, it's that Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor effect where, you can't have it, so you want it even more. He got suspended, and people were just outraged. And now the fact that he can come back, I feel like, he was vulnerable, and a lot of the fans are behind him, and they're dying to see him get back, especially with Nick Diaz, because you never really know if he wants to or if he will. But then he got GSP. No one even knows if he is coming back. I feel like Nick is more of a foregone conclusion. If GSP does come out of retirement and makes it official that he is back, a guy that, like you mentioned, never lost the belt, arguably the greatest welterweight of all time, that is going to be massive. A proven draw, and I think that's going to be an event in on itself. And if Woodley can beat a guy like that, that adds so much more legitimacy to his title reign. And I actually think GSP is the easier fight than Nick Diaz, considering his long layoff. And considering that, GSP is going to have a hard time trying to take down Tyron Woodley again and again with, Tyron's great takedown defense, I think Tyron's got a really good chance of winning this one.
Yeah, and look, there's plenty of fights to make for Nick Diaz, and I just really have that feeling that he'll have a few more fights, but he's not going to be hanging around forever. I feel like we're sort of near the end of Nick Diaz's career. So I think, that GSP matchup would make a lot of sense. But, I mean, the big question is, what does Stephen Wonderboy Thompson do while this is all going down? Does he sit out? Does he say, that's it, I'm drawing my line in the sand, I'm not fighting again until I get another title shot? Or is he in that sort of weird position where he might have to fight again before he does get another title shot?
Yeah, and that's a really big possibility. I think if he's going to fight anyone, there's probably 3 options. You could do the winner of Carlos Condit and Damien Maia. So he's either going to face Maia or Condit. You could do Nick Diaz. That could be... I mean,
it's a big fight.
That's a big fight. And I think that's one where if he does beat a guy like Nick Diaz and gets the rub and kind of saps his momentum. Nick Diaz is obviously an extremely well-known guy. He's not necessarily a proven draw, or at least not like he's a draw, but not like GSP. If Stephen Thompson can beat him, I think that could do a lot for him. It also depends how he beats him, because Carlos Condit beat Nick Diaz, and everybody hated him for it. So if he has another Rory McDonald type similar performance, it could potentially hurt him. You could do Stephen Thompson against Robbie Lawler, because I think Stephen Thompson could potentially beat him. And if he does beat a guy that was most recently champion, I think that sends a strong message. And then he goes on to fight the winner of Tyron Woodley and whoever he does fight, let's say Tyron Woodley, GSP, or depending on when, and this is obviously a hypothetical if they make the GSP fight, depending on how soon they make it, maybe Stephen Thompson just wants to sit on the sidelines.
I like this Stephen Thompson-Nick Diaz fight because I feel like if Nick Diaz beats him, and you're like, all right, Nick Diaz, he's back, and he's got his shit together. Everything's fine. We can trust him. You might be able to build him up to a title shot with a win over Stephen Thompson. And also, I feel like at least Thompson gets a big paycheck out of it. So he's on the sideline, but at least he's getting a decent paycheck. I mean, we've been talking about fighters making money and all of that. Well, a fight with Nick Diaz, you'd think he'd make a bit more money than he usually does. So, and then if he does beat Nick Diaz, then it adds more hype behind him if he does get the title shot. So with Robbie Lawler, I feel like it's a bit of a risk because what if Robbie beats Thompson, and then I guess you have Robbie versus GSP or Robbie versus Tyron again, but he sort of kills that title contender in Stephen Thompson for a bit.
Yeah.
So. But I'd love to see that. And imagine that fight between Nick Diaz and Stephen Thompson. That would be really interesting because I guess one of Diaz's biggest problems is, well, I guess, Thompson can run from him a bit like Carlos Condit did, but at least he won't be trying to take him down for the fight, and it will be a standing affair. And I'm very interested to see how Nick Diaz boxing would do against Stephen Thompson's crazy karate style. So it'd be a very interesting matchup.
There's a lot of options, and there's also, Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz sort of down the line. That's around the corner. I'm just going to put it out there. Or sort of put it on the record that I don't think Conor should be anywhere near welterweight. Not at the moment, not when it's that packed, and he's got too much chance of losing. The options are either 145 or 155, and realistically, it's got to be 145. He spent too much time away from that division. And with Nate, if he wins again, keep him at lightweight. He's got his own fights. He's got his own sort of title chase or big money fights that he's going to go for.
Yeah, well, I mean, after this fight, they got to address this whole featherweight situation.
Oh yeah,
it's getting ridiculous at this point. Like they're just sort of going over it, like, oh yeah, nothing much is going on. It's like, well, there is something major going on. You've got your champion fighting this other guy instead of defending his belt. And what's going to happen with him after this fight? I'm really hoping we get some answers after this fight where, okay, he's definitely going back to featherweight or he's definitely given up his belt. Because if they're like, oh yeah, we'll see, maybe he'll have another fight and then he'll return, it's like, are you kidding me? Why isn't he defending his title? This is ridiculous. I know he's Conor McGregor and he's got a lot of pull, but even this is ridiculous, So
yeah,
I'm hoping, like someone needs to push. I mean, enough's enough. After this fight, we need a definite answer. What's happening with the belt? Is he going back down? Is he not going back down? I don't know. Maybe we'll get his manager on after the fight and have a bit of a chat to him, pick his brain, see what he says. But there needs to be a definite answer. No more of this, oh, he might go here, he might go there. We need 100%. He's going back down or he's not. So the belt gets vacated and these guys can have a champion, for God's sake.
I like the fact that, it seems a little bit promising, the fact that he's going in lighter against Nate Diaz, or so it seems at least. He's not going as big as, when he was nearing 170, and then you had the speculation of, oh my God, he's never going to come back to 145. At least here he's kind of, bridging the gap. You can see him realistically, if he is at a sort of, on the lower end of the 170, scale or limit, at least you can see him going, all right, well, he can make the transition back to 145. But here's the thing, if you want to do these crazy fights with Conor McGregor and you want to see him at lightweight, etc., or welterweight or heavyweight, it doesn't really matter. By all means do him, but you got to strip him after this fight. You can't keep dicking around all these other contenders at featherweight. If he doesn't fight his next fight at 145, you have to strip him. I think it's that clear.
No more honey dicking. Let's get that belt off him. And I mean, he's a strong guy. He's super popular, but you can't have that much power that you just stop a division. You just can't do it. And I think Dana White needs to put his foot down on this. I know there's a lot of money involved, a lot of stuff involved, but someone's got to put their foot down, say enough's enough. This, we're trying to run a legitimate sport here and run these divisions, and we can't hold up the title for that much longer. But there you guys go, the welterweight division, crazy stuff. I guess, Cass, we'll see what happens in the future, and then we'll go from there and see what the UFC decide to do. A lot depends on if GSP wants to come back and if Nick Diaz would be willing to even take this fight, because in the interviews, I don't know, he's a bit iffy about if he'd even want to fight Woodley. So I guess we'll wait and see what happens.
The good thing is that by default, if GSP doesn't return, if they can't figure out these contract negotiations with, the Reebok deal and his Under Armour sponsorship and things like that, and then if Nick Diaz, for whatever reason, decides he either doesn't want to return or he doesn't really care to fight Tyron Woodley, you've always got that default. You've still got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So in a lot of ways, all might be right in the world in welterweight.
Yeah, that's it. But look, we are back. We apologize for the long delay. We've been away for a while. We've got a couple of things to talk to you guys before we let you go. The first is, look, I mentioned it a little bit earlier on, but me and Casper will be going back up for UFC 202. So you guys I don't know if you watched our coverage from UFC 200, but we were over there. We had a great time interviewing a bunch of guys and getting a bunch of content for you. And we'll be doing it again for UFC 202. But we will still be doing a show next week. So don't worry. We'll still be doing a show next week. And then when we come back, we'll still be doing a show sort of talking about what's happened between the Carlos Condit and Maia fight as well. So we're not going to disappear again for a long period of time. We apologize for the delay, but some exciting content to look forward to when we go up to Vegas to do UFC 202.
And just really quickly, and you're absolutely correct about everything you said, just quickly before we go, it is customary that whenever we've seen some movies, we do a couple of reviews. Now, I know that you saw Suicide Squad. I've been having some cinematic adventures of my own. I haven't seen Suicide Squad. I was going to see it 2 nights in a row with a girlfriend and just didn't end up happening. But you've seen it. You're a harsh critic. I love hearing your super harsh reviews. What did you think? Because a lot of people are shitting on it. What did you think of Suicide Squad?
Well, let me tell you, I went to the premiere, which was a strange experience all in its own because they actually confiscate your phones off you. They put them in little plastic bags, which I was like, should I steal someone's phone? Do I even want to watch the movie? I'm sick of my phone pausing when I play Pokemon Go. And then there's a security guard at the door actually then checks you to make sure you don't have like extra sneaky phones, one in your sock, one in your back pocket.
How does he check you? Is he full on getting frisky and putting his hands in your pockets and hanging around there a bit?
Yeah, it was like Border Patrol on the Australian TV show where they come into the country, basically.
Wow.
I like to sneak in my food as well, so I could have had things detained, burritos and all that other stuff, but they gave us some free food for this one. I will say this. I feel like people are too critical of this movie. It is better than Batman vs. Superman. I think the first half is very enjoyable. If you sort of don't think about the fact that it's a superhero movie and it has so much to live up to, I think you'll actually enjoy it. People listening right now, Will Smith does a very good job. The guy that plays Boomerang is great, and Margaret Robbie does a really good job as Harley Quinn. So there are some good things to enjoy. Look, the problem with DC movies, I think we're all across this now, is number one, Ben Affleck does some more Batman stuff in this movie. I won't say what he does, but it doesn't feel right still. It still feels a bit off. Still feels a little bit lame. Number two, Jared Leto's Joker. It's not a terrible Joker, but then I was thinking, if you got the Joker in the movie, he really should be memorable. And Leto's Joker isn't memorable, and I think that's a big problem as well. He also seems a little bit stupid, so I think fans will kind of find that annoying, and definitely do not think about Heath Ledger's Joker going into this one because you're going to have fits. You're going to have a stroke. They're going to have to wheel you out in some kind of ambulance, and you're going to have to take some time away from life. So don't compare him to that whatsoever because you're going to be very, very disappointed. And, and number three, the story's just really, really weak. The story arc doesn't really make much sense, and you could sort of feel that they didn't really think this thing through. When you get to the second half of the movie, which sort of drags out a little bit and sort of disappoints you a little bit because they could have done a lot more to make this movie a lot better. So what I will say is, I'll give it 2.5 out of 5, 2.5 Timothy Johnson mustaches out of 5. I still think if you go in with low expectations, you can enjoy it. A lot of people are giving it 1 out of 5, 1 out of 4, 0 out of 4. A lot of really harsh reviews out there. I don't think it's as bad as those people say it is. It's not like Batman vs. Superman where you're sort of sitting around just hating yourself by the end of the movie. You still get something out of it, but you have to look at it as a standalone movie and not think about it as a superhero movie for you to enjoy. Just think about it as another Will Smith movie, and you'll be like, oh yeah, it's just one of those Will Smith movies. Don't go in with high expectations because you guys might get stung a little bit. Wow. So there's my review there. What about you, Cass? Have you been watching any fun movies?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. First of all, I saw that apparently, so the deal with Suicide Squad is that the director, I think David Ayer, he had his vision for it. Batman vs. Superman came out, everybody trashed it. The studio, I think, which is Warner Brothers, freaked out, and they were like, we need to make drastic changes, especially how Deadpool came out and everybody loved it, and it was all funny, so apparently they reshot a bunch of stuff. Ayer still had his vision for the movie. The studio had a different one, which is just crazy, colorful, all over the place, and apparently they kind of combined the two, and they did test screenings, and they kind of found some kind of, I don't know if you'd call it a happy medium. I imagine the director probably wasn't too happy about it, but I'm hearing that's the issue with the movie, that it feels like two movies kind of joined together and they don't really meld. The other thing I was going to ask you is, you said you were at the premiere. Where was this premiere?
It's just a Crown Casino over here. It's just for media. They didn't actually have the actors there. But nah, exactly right. And I will say this, though. The studio's reshoots, like, you could really see the influence from Deadpool. Those are actually the parts of the movie that are good.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty good. It's pretty lucky that they did these reshoots. So I think that there are parts in the movie you can actually pinpoint that are the reshoots, and that's the big problem. In the second part of the movie, most of the reshoots are gone and sort of gone back to the director's vision, and that's where shit starts to sort of get out of control. So they're pretty lucky that they did these reshoots, because some of the comedic areas of the movie is what makes it sort of worthwhile, and some of the other ones sort of make it crap. So be interested to see if we could find out exactly what's what. But yeah, that's sort of what it felt like.
I'm hoping that when they do release it on like DVD or DVD, no one uses DVD anymore, Blu-ray, that there's like the director's cut as well, and you can sort of see both versions side by side. I know you said you were on a plane, you saw Batman vs Superman, you saw the director's cut, and it was still shit, but a little bit different. So I wouldn't mind sort of comparing them both side by side. I'll tell you about a little movie that I saw called Jason Bourne that was okay, but not great. I definitely wouldn't say it was as good as... Yeah, we're off to a strong start. I definitely wouldn't say it was as good as the other ones. I really enjoyed the first three Bourne movies. There are issues that I've had with every single one of them that are still prevalent in this one. You know what, though? I did find that it wasn't really that engaging. I think the plot was really, really basic. Like, they really weren't ambitious with the plot. It just kind of seemed like they went, you know what? Bourne hasn't been around for a while. The guy who plays Jeremy Renner, no, is that his name? I think the guy from Avengers. They're like, he wasn't really doing much as Bourne. We need to get old Matt Damon back, get a bit of money out of this franchise, and that's kind of what it feels like. You've got Tommy Lee Jones, who is looking very old these days, I'll say that. And then you've got Alicia Vikander, I don't know how... She's from Ex Machina and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I enjoyed her. I thought she was pretty good in this. One of the things that... speaking of people who look good and don't look good, man, Julia Stiles has aged a lot. I didn't realize it. But you know how a lot of people were saying Julia Stiles, she looks like Ronda Rousey, she should play Ronda Rousey? She has passed that point. I mean, I don't know whether they didn't put makeup on Julia Stiles in this movie or what, but she's definitely aged and looks very different compared to the way she did in the other movies. There's a cool fight scene at I won't say when, but there is a cool fight scene in the movie, so you can look forward to that. But throughout most of the movie, I just felt myself tuning out. I was looking around the cinema, I was looking at my girlfriend. There was a guy, and I was like, is it just me? There was a guy in front of me, he was on Facebook, and his phone was on full brightness, which normally would really piss me off. But I was like, I understand you, guy. I feel you, man. This movie just really, it's really not that engaging. There were a bunch of, different locations, as you expect with any Bourne movie. Some are exotic, some are usual. There is a location in the movie that every MMA fan will be very, very familiar with. You and me, Dennis, will also be familiar with. And you'll be like, okay, all right, I didn't see that, from a Bourne movie. Here's my issue with it, and this is the thing that has always pissed me off about more Bourne movies, and I think even if they address it, this wouldn't save the movie, but just the camera work. I'm not a videographer, I'm not a director, I'm not really, a guy that knows that much as far as the media side of, like, making movies or anything, but I don't know why they always... I'm just going to call it, like, shaky cam. I feel like they want you to feel like you're in the middle of the action in a Bourne movie, whether it's a fight scene, whether it's, someone's running after someone else, someone's getting shot at, whether it's a car chase. They always do this thing where they zoom in really close on whatever they're shooting. They zoom in really close, they blur it, and then they shake it around. And I think they're trying to make you feel like, oh, you're actually in a fight scene. I don't want to feel like I'm in a fight scene. I don't want to feel dizzy when I'm watching something. I want to enjoy it. So comparison would be, you remember The Matrix? You remember, and spoiler alert for a movie that's like almost 20 years old if you haven't seen it. Remember that fight scene in The Matrix where they're in the train station, Agent Smith and Neo, and it's like, you go to these crazy camera angles, but you can see everything in that fight scene, right? You understand, all right, Neo threw a punch, this guy threw a kick, whatever. You can see everything and appreciate it. With Bourne, it's like the director hung the camera on, like, Jason Bourne's or Matt Damon's belt, and it was like, just go for it, just fight, and whatever gets captured, we'll just use that. And that's something that really annoys me about all the Bourne movies. So between that and the sort of mediocre storyline, I'm going to give it 2.5. 2.5 Timothy Johnson mustaches. It's okay. It's not bad. It's not terrible, but it's not great. If you want to miss this movie, feel free to.
Yeah, you know, what kills me about that movie is, and I agree with you about Julia Stiles, she's unrecognizable.
So you've seen it. You've seen it as well.
Yeah, I've seen it as well. But I won't really chime in with too many things. But there's a car scene right at the end of it, like a car chase, and it goes for way too long. Like I forgot where I was at that point. Like I was doing the same thing. I was looking around the cinema as well. So
you know what's funny? I don't remember that car chase. That's how much I tuned out. And I'm like a really attentive, like, you know, vein bulging out of my forehead because I'm so focused kind of guy with anything. And I'd barely remember that car chase. People would like, oh, what about the car chase and stuff? I was like, I don't really remember it. I was that tuned out in the movie. I don't know. Didn't engage me.
Yeah, no, it's like they just sort of came in and they're like, all right, let's make some money off this franchise. And apparently they made a good amount of money off it and all of that stuff. But yeah, I agree with you. That's a solid score, 2.5 mustaches. I agree with that score. But look, before we let the people go, Cass, we mentioned it at the start, but just for everybody who's sort of still hanging around and tuning in, and just before we let you go, we've got this merchandise store up, the Submission Radio merchandise. We've had a bunch of people ask us for T-shirts and that sort of thing. It's taken us a while to figure out the logistics because we're in Australia, and a lot of our listeners are in America, UK, around the world. We've come up with it, and we've got one ready for you.
Yeah, so, and it comes in, obviously, multiple varieties. You got T-shirts, you got hoodies, you got sweatshirts, you got, I think, pullovers, you got tank tops as well. A couple of color variations, nothing too crazy. But if you guys enjoy the show, and if you've been listening for a while, over 2 years that we've been around doing this, or even if you're a sort of a new fan, if you do grab the T-shirt, it means the world to us. It's not something where we make a lot of money off. It was never the intention. It's more just, I guess it warms our heart, the fact that we know that people are out there willing to represent Submission Radio. And to be honest, it's really more the fact that you guys have been asking us and hounding us for a long time, and we felt bad for not doing this earlier. So it's now official. You can go out and get it. It's in the description below. So and this is, of course, on YouTube. So if you are listening on YouTube, you can just scroll down, or just go to submissionradio.com, and on the top right, there's a button that says Store. Just click that, and it'll take you straight there. And if you were to be so inclined, get some apparel, get some merch.
That's it, guys. And if you jump on Twitter and take a photo in your merch, we'd love to see it, love to retweet it, send it out to all our fans. So make sure to jump on that. It's at Submission AUS. Follow us and tweet us your pictures of the apparel and what you're doing with it and where in the world you are. It's always crazy to us when we see listeners from all these different parts of the world, like Gary from Michigan and the United States, and people just all over the place. So we love seeing it. We love talking to you guys, and we look forward to seeing some fun pictures. But yeah, with that, guys, that's pretty much it for our return show of Submission Radio. It's great to be back with you. Another show next week, and the week after that, we'll be at UFC 202. So with that, we bid you farewell, and we'll catch you next week.